Chapter 95. Don't drink. Her voice was like a sharp sword, filled with bloodlust, interrupting the joyous atmosphere of the banquet. The unforeseen event happened at this moment. Ingyu, who was standing beside Xiaoju, was holding a jug of wine in her hands. She had poured wine into the jug, and did not have time to take it back. He Yan's voice fell, as if she had received some kind of signal. A dagger appeared under the jug of wine, and without hesitation, stabbed towards Xiaoju. The young man's expression was calm, and did not show any signs of panic. The jade cup in his hand flew out, and collided with the dagger in the air, shattering into pieces and stopping the tip of the dagger. In a split second, the wind blew from all directions. The beautiful women who had just finished dancing did not all retreat. They stood to the left and right, and immediately rushed toward Xiaoju. This was a carefully planned assassination. "Uncle," Ian called out. The young man slammed the table, and a long sword appeared in his hand. He was surrounded by more than 10 people and coldly ordered, "Hide further away." Sun Xiangfu was stunned by the sudden turn of events. He was so scared that he covered his head and hid under the table. He did not forget to shout, someone come quickly." Ian was paying attention to the bodyguard behind Yuan Baozhen. She had thought that since this person was He Rufei's man, there must be a reason for him to follow behind Yuan Baozhen. However, in her anger, she only cared about the wine on the table, and did not think that the women around her were assassins. Yuan Baozhen was protected by the bodyguard behind him, and retreated a few steps. He looked panicked. The bodyguard did not make a move. Could it be that today's assassins were just a coincidence? Ian thought in her heart. She looked at Xiaoju, who was surrounded and almost exploded in anger. The assassins were all women. Whether it was the women who had just danced or the women who had played the zither, each of them had light bodies. They looked gentle and soft, but their attacks were vicious. Hidden in their sleeves were hidden arrows. With a wave of their sleeves, the hidden weapons flew toward Xiaoju. In such a big banquet, Xiaoju was the only one who could fight against 10 people. No matter if it was He Yan's previous life on the battlefield, or this life in the martial arts practice field, he had always been open and aboveboard. When had he ever seen such underhanded methods? For a moment, he was filled with righteous indignation. Seeing the small knife used to cut the roasted venison on the table, he grabbed it and rushed into the crowd. "Uncle, I'll help you." He Yan was halfway through her words when she suddenly remembered that she was Cheng Li Su. How could the useless young master of the Shoa capital know martial arts? She was afraid that she would not be able to openly show her martial arts skills. She shouted her heart, she shouted. "Why are these people's sleeves so long? She's SSSSS cut, SSSSS." The water sleeves instantly turned into short sleeves. When he used the concealed weapon again, his movements were very obvious. Just like that, Ian shouted as she circled around the crowd. Her figure was light and graceful, as slippery as a loach. Everyone wanted to catch her, but they couldn't. The young man was screaming and cursing at the same time, making the scene somewhat comical. Xiaoju swung her sword to block the knife of the woman in front of her. She turned her head and glanced at her. Yan was still shouting, "Help! Murder!" She blocked a dart in front of her, and kicked the face of the woman next to her. Xiaoju's mouth twitched. The target of the singing girls was Xiaoju. All their sinister methods and hidden weapons were aimed at Xiaoju. Now that a young man had suddenly appeared, everything was disrupted. Yu's face was ashen. She clenched her fist and said hatefully, "Despicable." She chopped at Yan's head. Yan shouted, "Aya," and hid behind Xiaoju. "Uncle, save me." She was shocked. These 10 or so women were all very skilled. It was not something that could be trained overnight. This kind of technique was more like a death squad that was specially trained to kill people. Who did Xiaoju offend? Why would they use such a method to kill him? Among this group of women, Yu was the most skilled. But it was not the most skilled. She had countless hidden weapons. Date seed arrows, plum blossom needles, amay thorns, iron lotus. Yan did not know how she could store so many hidden weapons in her sleeves. However, Xiaoju did not seem to want to take the man's life. The tip of her sword avoided the vital points. Yan knew that when he was young, his sword skills were outstanding. Now that they met again, this was the first time he saw him in action. The assassin could not get close. He was injured by the autumn sword and fell to the ground. He pulled Yu's sleeve. Yu was pulled forward. In the next moment, the tip of his sword was pointed at Yu's throat. The young man's voice was low. It was more pleasant than the sound of the zither. It contained an unconcealable murderous intent. Who sent you? Yen could not help but look at the bodyguard behind Yuan Baozhen. The bodyguard was standing in front of Yuan Baozhen. His face, which was hidden in the dark, was now revealed. His expression was also very flustered, as if he didn't expect this to happen and couldn't see any clues. However, Yen saw that his index finger slowly bent into a semicircle. No one would pay attention to a bodyguard at this time. The movement of his finger was extremely small. If Yen had not been paying attention to him, he would have missed it. Her intuition, which had been cultivated for many years, made her subconsciously turn around to look. She saw the manservant, who had been hiding at the door, pouncing towards Xiaoju. Be careful. Xiaoju was pointing at Yu. Yen did not care about anything else. He pushed Xiaoju away. The man who had pounced in front of Xiaoju was stabbed in the throat by Xiaoju. The assassins had always been women. Who would pay attention to this manservant? Moreover, from the very first moment of the incident, this person had been hiding under the short table like any other weak servant. Who would have thought that he would be the last chess piece? What's the matter? Xiaoju frowned and asked her. Yen shook his head. Yu, who was on the ground, suddenly laughed. In the dead silence, her laughter was particularly ear-piercing. Yen turned his head to look. The beauty's lips were bleeding, but her expression was ruthless. Yen took a step forward and asked, Who are you? Why do you want to harm my uncle? Yu looked at Yen with a fierce expression. If you did not come out to mess things up, this would not have happened. You'll never know who my master is. She coughed up more and more blood. The blood that flowed out was an abnormal black color. He looked at the women around her, and saw that they were all the same. Yen understood. She was indeed a death warrior. Once the assassination failed, she would commit suicide. Is that so? Xiaoju looked at Yu and suddenly smiled. His eyes were full of ridicule as he said, There are countless people in the world who want to kill me, but there is only one person who is so impatient. I'll accept your master's gift. I hope that your master can accept my gift in return. Yu's expression changed greatly, but she had already taken the poison. In just a moment, her face turned ashen. Like the other 10 women, she died and no longer breathed. Xiaoju stepped over her body and stood in the middle of the hall. He looked at Sun Xiangfu, who was hiding under the low table and trembling in fear. He reprimanded, Magistrate Sun, why don't you explain why the servants in your residence tried to assassinate me during your banquet? Are you deliberately trying to harm me? Sun Xiangfu had long been so scared that his mind was in a mess. When he heard this, he almost cried. Seeing that the assassin was gone, he dared to stand up from the short table and hurriedly explained, Commander-in-Chief, I really didn't know. Even if I had 10 times the courage, I would not dare to harm you. I only brought these singers back to the residence half a month ago. I didn't know they were assassins. Magistrate Yuan, please help me explain. I really don't know what is going on. Yuan Baozhen, who had been silent all this time, also came back to his senses. He patted his chest and said with lingering fear, Magistrate Sun, this is not a matter of whether you know or not. These singers are all people in your residence. If something really happened to Military Governor Xiao today, you will not be able to escape responsibility. I think this matter is not as simple as it seems on the surface. Let's clean up this place first, and ask a coroner to see where these people came from, and what their identities are. He then looked at Xiaoju. Military Governor Xiao is also frightened. Why don't you clean up first and change to another place? Let Magistrate Sun explain what is going on. I think these singers have come prepared. Xiaoju looked at him with a smile that was not a smile, and said, Okay. The banquet came to an abrupt end in the middle of the night, but at this moment, no one was in the mood to continue. The hall was a mess. The coroner and bailiffs quickly came over, and carried the bodies of the singers away. Yuan Baozhen asked, Do you want to search their bodies to see if they have any keepsakes? Since they have been in the Sun residence for half a month, the keepsakes should have been hidden well. Why would they leave it on their bodies for people to search? If they really do have it, I'm afraid they are trying to frame someone else. Xiao Ju stared at Yuan Baozhen and said lightly, Magistrate Yuan, don't fall into their trap. Yuan Baozhen's scalp tightened. Xiao Ju did not pay attention to him anymore. He turned his head and saw He Yin standing there in a daze. He suddenly remembered that she seemed to have not said anything since just now. Was she frightened? Why are you standing there in a daze? Let's go, he said to He Yin. As soon as he finished speaking, he felt his sleeve being pulled. Uncle. The young man raised his head. The smile on his face was gone, and there was a rare trace of nervousness. His gaze was also blank. It fell on his face, as if he was not looking at him. He said, Just now when the servant rushed over, I pushed you away. He scattered a handful of things on my face. My eyes hurt a little. His voice was small, and it was not as arrogant as before. He was a little flustered. I think I can't see. The doctors went in one by one and quickly came out. They all looked terrified. Everyone shook their heads and sighed. Xiao Ju's face became more and more gloomy. Sun Xiangfu watched from the side with fear. Who would have thought that Xiao Ju's nephew, the young man who always followed Xiao Ju, would have his eyes injured by an assassin? The doctors could only open his eyelids to take a look. The young man only said that he could not see. There were no godly doctors in Liangzhou City, and all the doctors that could be found were all useless. The powder on the ground had long been blown away by the wind, leaving no trace behind. They did not even know what kind of poison it was, so how could they treat it? Fortunately, only the young man's eyes were injured. The rest of his body was fine. Otherwise, if his life was threatened, the governor would be furious. Governor, Sun Xiangfu said, this official will go and find another doctor. The young master is a good person, and he will be fine. Xiao Ju said, Get lost. Everyone could hear the anger in his words. Sun Xiangfu did not dare to anger Xiao Ju at this juncture. He hurriedly said a few words, and hurriedly left as if he was running for his life. Xiao Ju stood outside the room. He paused for a moment and then walked in. He happened to pass by the last doctor. He saw the young man sitting on the bed with a calm expression. He did not know what he was thinking. After a moment, he used his hands to gesture in front of his face, as if he could not believe that he could not see. Because she had cried out in pain, the doctor did not dare to use any medicine. He only found some soothing and cooling herbs, and applied them on a clean cloth. He used the cloth to cover her eyes. Ian had always been cheerful. Sometimes he was smart, sometimes he was stupid. As for whether he was really stupid or just pretending to be stupid, no one knew. His eyes were very clever. They were clear and bright. When he stared, he looked a little silly. When he curved his eyes, they were full of vitality and slyness. Now that the cloth covered her eyes, the young man's face became unfamiliar in an instant. Even his previous lively expressions seemed to be blurred. Xiao Ju suddenly remembered that during the banquet, when Ing Yu and the others tried to assassinate him, He Yin did not waver when he rushed over. Even if He Yin did not mention it, he would not drink the wine poured by Ing Yu. However, the fear and anger in the young man's voice did not seem to be fake. It even made people's hearts tremble. He walked in and stopped in front of He Yan's bed. He Yan seemed to feel something, but he was not sure. He tilted his head and asked carefully, Is someone here? Xiao Ju did not say anything. Is there no one? She whispered again, and turned her head to the side to be quiet. On the way to Liangzhou City, He Yan was very talkative. Xiao Ju did not talk to her, so she went to look for Fei Nu. Fei Nu did not talk much. Song Taotao, who appeared later, took over this vacancy. When a person who was always chattering suddenly became quiet, people would not be used to it. This young man was only 16 years old, but he was different from ordinary people. When he found out that he could not see, he was a little flustered. However, he did not wail or cry. It was as if he quickly accepted this fact. However, when he sat quietly, it made people feel a little sorry for him. It was probably because he was too thin and weak. Looking at him like this, he looked very pitiful. Xiao Ju asked, How do you feel? Oh, uncle? He Yin was surprised for a moment, then said, I'm just not used to it. She reached out as if she wanted to touch her eyes, but what she touched was a piece of cloth. She immediately retracted her hand and said, "Are my eyes really blind?" Even when he asked this, his tone was calm. Xiao Ju should have said yes, but at this moment he actually could not say it. This young man with extraordinary skills was at the prime of his life. With his talent, he would definitely be promoted in a few years in the Liangzhou City Guards. A pearl in a puddle of muddy water would not be buried no matter what. However, losing a pair of eyes was a different situation. Not to mention the impact it would have on the future. It would take courage for him to get used to these dark days. After all, it was not as if he could not see from the moment he was born. Having something and then losing it was much more unbearable than not having it in the first place. "Uncle, you're not sad for me, are you?" Hien suddenly asked. Although his eyes were covered by a piece of cloth, the tone in which she said this made one imagine that if it were any other time, her eyes would be wide open and filled with mischief and ridicule. "Maybe you're still blaming yourself?" She smiled and said, "Actually, you don't have to blame yourself for me. You should praise me. Maybe if you praise me, I'll think that everything I've done was worth it." "Praise you for what?" Xiao Ju said indifferently. "Of course you're praising me for being amazing." The young man's voice was a little surprised, but also a little proud. "If I didn't remind you not to drink just now, this assassination attempt would not have happened. I'm your savior, am I not amazing?" She still had the heart to think about these things at a time like this? Xiao Ju was speechless. He did not know whether to say that this young man was careless, or that he really did not care. "You don't seem to be sad." Xiao Ju said, "You can't see. Maybe you'll never be able to see again." As soon as she said this, the young man's fingers curled up. Although it was very subtle, Xiao Ju still caught it. He was afraid, and it was not as easy as he made it seem. "God won't be so bad to me, right?" Hien said. "I've never done anything bad in my life. Why are you treating me like this? If you really want to treat me like this, then I can't do anything. There are many kinds of blind people. I'm so good, so I'll be the best of them all." Xiao Ju was slightly startled. This sentence sounded strangely familiar, as if he had heard it a long time ago. "But uncle, are you going to give up so early? I think you should find me a few more doctors to take a look at me. Maybe I can be cured." "Why do you say it as if it's incurable?" he asked. Xiao Ju looked at him. Although the young man tried his best to appear normal, he was still a little tired. He said, "Have a good rest." Then he turned and left. Xiao Ju left the room, and the room returned to its original calm. Because there might be assassins in the house, all the servants in the house were evacuated. Only Fei Nu, one of Xiao Ju's own men, remained in the courtyard. Hien stretched out his hand, as if he wanted to untie the knot in his head. After a while he put down his hand and did not continue. She lowered her head and muttered, "Ding Yi." Yuan Baozhen's bodyguard, he Rufei's former servant, the person who personally gave her a bowl of poison in her previous life. She heard Yuan Baozhen call his name. His name was Ding Yi. In the study, Sun Xiangfu's face was scrunched up. He was about to cry. The person sitting in front of him was Yuan Baozhen. Yuan Baozhen said, "Magistrate Sun, I can't help you with this." "Magistrate Yuan, you can't leave me in the lurch. Right now the only person who can help me is you," Sun Xiangfu said with a sad face. "I really don't know what happened to those assassins today. Now that the Commander-in-Chief is angry and young Master Chen can't see, Commander-in-Chief Xiao will definitely vent his anger on this lowly official. I'm just a county magistrate. How can I bear the anger of General Feng Yun?" Sun Xiangfu had personally witnessed the close relationship between Xiao Ju and Cheng Lisu, this pair of uncle and nephew. When Cheng Lisu and Sun Ling got into an argument, Xiao Ju rushed over to protect Cheng Lisu. It was truly frightening. At that time, it was just a small argument. Now that Cheng Lisu was blind, wouldn't Xiao Ju pay with her life? Sun Xiangfu thought of this and began to tremble. "I don't think Military Governor Xiao is such an unreasonable person," Yuan Baozhen comforted. As the two were talking, Xiao Ju arrived. Sun Xiangfu didn't have time to beg Yuan Baozhen. He lifted his robe and knelt in front of Xiao Ju. "What is the meaning of this?" Xiao Ju looked at him coldly and asked. "Governor, I really don't know what is going on right now. I was also tricked by them. Even if I had 100 times the courage, I wouldn't dare to harm you. Sun Xiangfu began to cry out his innocence. Stand up. Xiaoju glanced at him as if she didn't like his actions. She walked in and sat down on the chair at the head of the table. She looked at him and said, Tell me how you met them. She paused and then added, Those assassins. This she believed that he wasn't the mastermind? When Sun Xiangfu noticed this, he was overjoyed. Yuan Baozhen's eyes flashed, but he didn't make a sound. Sun Xiangfu hurriedly stood up. He didn't even brush off the dust on his robe, and retreated to a lower chair to sit down. In this way, he and Yuan Baozhen sat in a position where Xiaoju was the leader. Sun Xiangfu wiped the sweat from his forehead and said, Actually, they have only been in the Fu for half a month. At first, there was a new opera troupe in the city. The leader of this opera troupe was an old woman. She brought a group of beautiful girls to the city. She said that there was a drought in the place where they lived and there was no way to survive, so they moved to Liangzhou City. They set up a stage in the east of Liangzhou City and performed 3 times a day. In the beginning, only commoners came to take a look. Not only were these girls beautiful, but they also sang very well. They were very eye-catching, and gradually became famous. Many nobles also came to know about them. After a while, the news reached Sun Ling's ears. Sun Ling had touched all the beautiful girls in Liangzhou City. The night Sun Ling watched the show, he asked someone to buy the group of girls to perform in the Fu. The leader of the troupe, the old woman, refused and was injured by Sun Ling's servants. When she was about to be beaten to death, Yingyu stood up and said that she was willing to persuade her sisters to enter the Fu. She only hoped that Sun Ling would let their leader go. Sun Ling generously did as he was told. Yingyu really managed to persuade the group of girls. After entering the Fu, they were very gentle. After entering the Sun Fu, Sun Ling found that this group of girls not only knew how to sing, but were also proficient in the 4 arts. Among them, Yingyu was the most outstanding. Sun Xiangfu also knew about Yingyu. Sun Xiangfu was different from Sun Ling. Sun Ling only knew how to eat, drink and play, but Sun Xiangfu was a bit ambitious. Being the county magistrate of Liangzhou City was good, but what if he could go further? Even if he didn't take another step forward, the position of county magistrate wasn't really stable. He had to bribe people from top to bottom. He had to maintain good relations with both familiar and unfamiliar people. For example, he wasn't very familiar with the new commander of the Liang Province Guards. Sun Xiangfu asked Yingyu to come. He had Yingyu hold a banquet in the Fu to liven things up for the guests. In any case, there were 2 guests, Imperial Censor Yuan Baozhen and Right Army Commander Xiaoju. As long as he got on the good side of one of them, he could rest easy. Although Sun Ling was a bit dissatisfied, there was nothing he could do. In the days that followed, Yingyu seriously brought her sisters to practice dancing and singing. Every time Sun Xiangfu went over to watch, he was very satisfied. This servant was also very smart. When she entered the Fu for the leader of the troupe, she was a bit unwilling. After experiencing the extravagance of the Sun Fu, she became even more clever. Sometimes, when Sun Xiangfu talked to her, he could feel her desire for power. That's right. People walk to higher places while water flows to lower places. This was the case for everyone, men and women alike. Up until tonight's incident at the banquet, Sun Xiangfu still thought this way. When he talked about these things, probably because he was embarrassed, he added a bit of embellishment. However, without those unimportant embellishments, it was just one thing. Sun Ling was lustful, but who knew that he would pick up a poisonous snake? I really didn't think that they were assassins. Women. How can women be assassins? Sun Xiangfu said. It wasn't clear whether he was saying this to Xiaoju or to himself. To the father and son of the Sun family, women had always been playthings, or things that were sent to win the favor of their superiors. Now that he had been played by a woman, it was hard to describe his feelings at the moment. These assassins entered the Fu half a month ago? Xiaoju asked. Sun Xiangfu nodded. That's right. This is all my fault. I didn't carefully check their identities. I only thought that they were women who had no relatives in the city and were weak and pitiful, so he tried his best to say that he took pity on their weakness and brought them into the Fu, but Xiaoju didn't pay any attention to him. She only played with the teacup in her hand and said lightly, Half a month ago, Magistrate Sun didn't send me an invitation to the Fu. Sun Xiangfu paused. But half a month ago, Official Yuan should have known that you would arrive in Liangzhou. He tilted his head and looked at Yuan Baozhen with a half-smile. Hearing this, Yuan Baozhen replied with a smile. What does Governor mean? Are you suspecting me? Governor, why don't you think about it? If I really arranged for these women, how could I be sure that Magistrate Sun would take them back to the Fu? I can't predict things like a god. Of course you can't predict things like a god. Xiao Ju's lips curved slightly and said unhurriedly, You only need to write a letter to Magistrate Sunday. She was saying that Yuan Baozhen and Sun Xiangfu had set this up together. Sun Xiangfu finally thought that he had cleared himself of suspicion. But Xiao Ju's words immediately made him sweat profusely. He hurriedly waved his hand and said, No, Governor, I really didn't. I don't know what's going on. I also didn't receive a letter from Official Yuan. Yuan Baozhen also stopped smiling. He looked at Xiao Ju and said seriously, Governor, with just one sentence, you have convicted me and Magistrate Sun, but you don't even have evidence. It really makes one's heart cold. I don't have any deep enmity with you, and this is the first time I've eaten with you. How could I harm you? He was born with a kind face, and his words were very sincere, but there was also a hint of sadness at being misunderstood. Xiao Ju stared at him for a while. After a moment he smiled and said indifferently, It's just a joke. Official Yuan doesn't need to take it seriously. He withdrew his smile and became cold again. He was like a knife that was about to be unsheathed, hiding the fierceness of a mountain storm. However, there are many suspicious points in this matter. Before I figure it out, I'm afraid I'll have to disturb you for a few days, he said. Governor, you're going to live here? After the assassination attempt, normal people would only feel that this place was not safe, and would leave as soon as possible to avoid being schemed against again. Why was he still staying here? Yes. The young governor put down his teacup and stood up. He was tall and slender, and his eyes were slightly cold. Live here and catch the thief. Chapter 96. At night, there was a row of soldiers standing in front of Sun Fu's gate. It did not make sense to use soldiers to guard his own gate. However, Sun Xiangfu was like a bird that was startled by the twang of a bow. He did not care so much. All of the servants in the Fu were interrogated one by one. For the time being, nothing suspicious was found. Right Army Governor Xiao Ju and Imperial Censor Yuan Baozhen both lived in the Fu. Sun Xiangfu also noticed the undercurrent under these two's calmness. He sat in the room and sighed. Sun Ling had already learned the whole story from the servants and said, Father, why are you still worried about this? Sun Xiang felt extremely lucky. If you hadn't been so meddlesome and brought those women back to the residence, none of this would have happened. Father, I took them back to the Fu for my own use. I did not ask you to use them to entertain guests. Sun Ling could not take it anymore and rolled his eyes. Now that there is trouble, how can you blame me? Those women are useless. If they wanted to assassinate someone, they should have succeeded in one try. Who knows who will benefit if they died for nothing? Before he finished, Sun Ling's mouth was covered by Sun Xiangfu, who rushed over. Sun Xiangfu looked around and scolded. Do you want to die? Saying such things. I did not say anything wrong. Sun Ling moved closer and said in a low voice, Father, do you also not like that Xiao Ju? Sun Xiangfu did not speak. Was this a question of whether he liked her or not? Compared to whether he liked Xiao Ju or not, he should be more worried about whether Xiao Ju liked him or not. I heard that military governor Xiao and Darren Yuan seem to have some disagreements. When the two of them fight, you just need to sit on the mountain and watch the tigers fight. Darren Yuan is not bad and is friendly. You can help him secretly. The enemy of an enemy is a friend. Sun Ling said. If something really happens in the end, you will have gotten rid of Xiao Ju and become friends with Darren Yuan. Wouldn't that be killing two birds with one stone? He thought his words made sense. Sun Xiangfu suddenly slapped him on the head. Sun Xiangfu scolded. How can it be as simple as you say? You didn't see it today. Xiao Ju. He thought of something and fear flashed across his eyes. She's not easy to deal with. Inside the room, Yuan Baozhen sat in front of the table, his expression uncertain. The average-looking guard was standing behind him, but his eyes were also flickering. Xiao Ju is suspicious of me. After a moment, Yuan Baozhen said. If today's matter doesn't work, I'm afraid there won't be another chance. Why would he suspect you? The bodyguard, the man named Ding Yi, asked. I don't know. Thinking of what happened in Sun Xiangfu's study, Yuan Baozhen was angry. Xiao Ju's suspicion was blatant and her tone was arrogant. He did not know how to respond. He had just arrived in Liangzhou City and had never interacted with Xiao Ju before. No matter what, Xiao Ju should not suspect him. Also, how could Cheng Lisu be blind? Yuan Baozhen frowned. Was this also arranged in advance? Ding Yi shook his head. I've never heard of it. There was no point in suspecting him. Now that all the assassins were dead, no one was alive. Even if he was full of questions, there was no one to answer. That Cheng Lisu is a bit strange, Ding Yi said. If he hadn't stopped them today, perhaps Xiao Ju would have drunk the poison wine. With his reminder, Yuan Baozhen remembered something. At the banquet tonight, when Xiao Ju raised her wine cup, Cheng Lisu's shout of "Don't drink it" came suddenly and loudly, causing the assassins to act prematurely. If he hadn't stopped them, they wouldn't be in such a difficult situation now. How did he know that the wine was poisoned? Yuan Baozhen muttered. After a moment, he stroked the oil lamp on the table and said, Since Xiao Ju and the others are in the residence, this is our chance. I'll test Cheng Lisu tomorrow. If this young man is really blind, maybe we can use him to tie down Xiao Ju and save the country. He Yan didn't know that in these invisible places, there was a surging undercurrent. At this moment, she was sitting in the room, arguing with Fei Nu. After her eyes were damaged, Xiao Ju called Fei Nu to guard He Yan's room. After all, there were already assassins in the Sun residence. Who knew if there would be more hidden people among the servants? He Yan didn't feel at ease if he was alone. With Fei Nu guarding, it was much safer. Brother Fei Nu, please leave. I can really do it myself. He Yan had a headache. You can't see. Fei Nu's reply was very stiff. Young master asked me to guard you. Then you can just guard the door. If you were to be my personal servant, I would be very uncomfortable. He Yan replied seriously. Can you leave? Forgive me for not being able to comply. Why are you the same as your master? Can't you be more reasonable? Xiao Ju had just arrived at the door when he heard this sentence. He stopped and stood at the door. What happened? Fei Nu said, Young master. Without waiting for Fei Nu to finish speaking, He Yan had already looked in the direction of the door. Her eyes were still covered with cloth and her hands were clutching some clothes. Is uncle here? Brother Fei Nu is crazy. He wants to help me bathe. Fei Nu's lips moved. He seemed to be speechless at her insulted expression. He explained he can't see. I'm afraid. Uncle, it's not like you don't know that I have a fiancé. My body is as clean as ice and as clean as jade. How can it be seen by others? That young man's voice was bright and cheerful. The desolation and panic from before had already been swept away, and he was back to his usual unreasonable appearance. If I were to break up because of your marriage, big brother Fei Nu, would you be able to compensate me with a fiancé? She muttered. You don't even have one yourself. Fei Nu. Xiao Ju looked at her and mocked. Are you sure you won't drown? The bathtub was placed behind the screen in the middle of the room. The water was not deep. Perhaps it was because the days in the Sun residence were so extravagant that there was a circle of flower petals scattered on top of it. He Yan had never used such an exquisite flower bath when she was a woman. Now that she was a man, she actually used it. Uncle, did you forget that in Liangzhou, I could shoot a sparrow in the sky blindfolded? How can I drown? He Yan said, Don't worry. Besides, if I really become blind, I can't let others do things for me for the rest of my life. Uncle, you have that possibility, but I'd better forget about it. Fei Nu was also speechless. He had seen many brothers in the Nine Banners Battalion. Occasionally there would be some who were missing an arm or a leg. Although they could pass their days with a smile, in any case, they would be depressed for a period of time. He Yan was the first person he had ever seen to recover from this kind of mood. If it were not for the cloth covering her face, people would wonder if she was really blind. Xiao Ju saw that she was full of vigor, so she did not feel like paying attention to her. She only said to Fei Nu, "Come out." Fei Nu followed Xiao Ju out. He Yan finally breathed a sigh of relief when the door was closed. She did not remove the cloth covering her face. She took off her clothes and entered the bathtub, soaking her whole body in the water. If someone else was here, they would be surprised. She did this just like any other ordinary person. Her movements were without the slightest hesitation, as if she could see everything. The temperature of the water was just right. She had always bathed in the river next to the city guard station. The river water was ice cold, so it was not as comfortable as this. However, even though it was comfortable, she did not dare to be greedy. The steam rose and blurred her figure. The smile on Hyan's face also relaxed. She thought that she would be attending the banquet, but she did not expect that she would have to stay here for a few more days. In this way, coupled with the fact that she could not see, there would be more people serving her. She would have to be more careful of her identity being exposed. She still remembered Ding Yi's last movement at the banquet. That subtle movement of bending his finger. If she had not been staring at Ding Yi, she would have missed it. But because she recognized Ding Yi, she knew that the servant who rushed out to attack Xiao Ju was arranged by Ding Yi. Then this matter became very strange. Ding Yi was He Rufei's servant. Yuan Baozhen was also He Rufei's friend. Ding Yi colluded with the assassins at the banquet to assassinate Xiao Ju. In a way, it could be said that it was He Rufei's idea. But why did He Rufei want to kill Xiao Ju? In her previous life, when she was He Rufei, she and Xiao Ju did not interfere with each other's business. They were even classmates in the Xianchang gymnasium, so they could be considered friends. Now that He Rufei had returned to his original self, he did not have any enmity with Xiao Ju. Why would he use such a vicious method to kill Xiao Ju? Perhaps she should go talk to Yuan Baozhen. At night, He Yan and Xiao Ju slept in the same room as Fei Nu. Because they were afraid that there would be other assassins in the Sun residence, they did not separate. However, there were many courtyards in the Sun residence. This room was divided into an inner room and an outer room. Naturally, second young master Xiao lived in the inner room. In the outer room, Fei Nu and He Yan each slept on one side of the outer room. He Yan felt that this way of sleeping was as if she was protecting Xiao Ju. Thinking about how she was injured because of Xiao Ju, she did not expect that she would not even be able to sleep on the inner room. Thinking about it, she really felt that it was not worth it. However, she did not think for long before He Yan fell asleep. This sleep was actually very peaceful. Early the next morning, He Yan was woken up by Fei Nu. She sat up. Her eyes were filled with darkness. She subconsciously asked, "What time is it?" 7 in the morning. Fei Nu replied. "Oh." He Yan touched the cloth covering her eyes again. This time she directly untied it. From darkness to light, if one was able to see, they would definitely have to squint their eyes to adapt. However, He Yan only opened her eyes and did not feel the slightest bit of discomfort. Fei Nu's heart sank. She asked, "Can you see?" He Yan blankly shook her head. There was a moment of silence. "Maybe. It will be fine in a few days." Fei Nu clumsily comforted her. He did not sympathize with He Yan. However, he heard that during the banquet last night, He Yan not only reminded Xiao Ju, but also personally helped Xiao Ju deal with the assassins. These were two different things. Although this young man's identity was suspicious, he had not harmed Xiao Ju so far. "Is uncle not here?" He Yan asked. Young master went out. He Yan nodded again. After thinking for a while, she covered her eyes with the cloth again. Fei Nu was surprised. "Why are you wearing it again?" The herbal medicine had already been used for a day, and was no longer effective. Today He Yan did not complain that her eyes hurt, so the cloth was useless. Wearing it was actually uncomfortable. "It's better to wear it to remind others that I can't see now." He Yan smiled. "People have to be more tolerant towards a blind person. I can't avoid others, but others can avoid me, right?" Between wearing the cloth and not wearing it, it was obvious that the former looked more like a blind person. Fei Nu's heart trembled. It was as if something flashed through his mind. After a moment he did not say anything. He only said, "Let's go and eat first." He Yan nodded. Xiao Ju was not here. After Fei Nu and He Yan freshened up, they sat in the room and ate. The food was also bought by Fei Nu in advance. He Yan did not want Fei Nu to help him. He ate very slowly, but his movements were steady. He did not spill the soup. The maids that Sun Xiangfu called were all dismissed. With Xiao Ju as an example, He Yan did not dare to trust any of the maids here. After eating, Fei Nu ordered the maids to clear away the leftovers on the table. He Yan sat alone for less than a moment when someone's voice sounded. The footsteps were very light. If it was not for her excellent hearing, it would be difficult for ordinary people to hear. It was not one person but two people. Xiao Ju did not need to be like this. When Fei Nu left, He Yan already knew who it was. However, she did not show it on her face. She still sat quietly as if in a daze. The footsteps fell in front of her. It seemed that the person was carefully observing her. He Yan's eyes were covered with the cloth and did not move. After a while, the person did not seem to find any flaws. Suddenly he said, "Young Master Chung." "Ah." He Yan jumped in fright and almost fell from the chair. She stood up in a hurry and knocked her foot on the table leg. She cried out in pain. Someone came to help her and said, "Are you okay?" He Yan opened her hands and grabbed randomly. She said, "Who is it?" He grabbed the corner of a person's clothes. That person comforted her kindly. "I am Yuan Baozhen. I am not a bad person. Young master, don't worry." He Yan calmed down and breathed a sigh of relief. She said with lingering fear, "So it is Imperial Censor Yuan. I thought it was those assassins again. I was scared to death. Why didn't you say anything when you came in?" I am sorry. I did not expect to scare young master," Yuan Baozhen said with a smile. "I heard that young master is blind, so I came to see you." When he said this, although his tone was concerned and distressed, there was no smile on his face. He stared at He Yan's expression, as if he wanted to see whether He Yan was really blind or not. However, He Yan's eyes were covered with cloth and could not see anything. If one could not see a person's eyes, it would be difficult to see through their expressions. His head was leaning to the extreme. Normal people might not be able to notice this, but He Yan could clearly feel it. The person she grabbed was Ding Yi. Yuan Baozhen was greedy for life and afraid of accidents, so he would not go forward directly. However, his eyes were like maggots in a tarsal bone. It was hard to ignore. Even so, He Yan did not show it at all. She seemed to be a little distressed, but with a youthful indifference she said, "Yes, I can't see now. However, Uncle said that he would find a godly doctor to cure me, so it should only be temporary." It would have been better if she did not say this. Once she said this, it almost made people believe that she really could not see. This was because the title of godly doctor carried a kind of comforting and perfunctory meaning. It was used to coax children. Yuan Baozhen sat down on a chair next to her. He shook his head and sighed. "I did not expect young master to be injured on this trip. Fortunately, no life was harmed, and Military Governor Xiao is also fine." As he said this, he seemed to think of something. He looked at He Yan and asked in confusion, "Young master, last night at the banquet, how did you know that there was an assassin at that time and did not let the governor drink that cup of wine?" No one knew whether that cup of wine was poisonous or not. Therefore, Yuan Baozhen asked very coincidentally and did not mention the wine at all. He only said that there was an assassination. He Yan sneered in her heart. He was testing her. She raised her head, as if she did not know where Yuan Baozhen was. She hesitated for a moment before saying, "I did not know there was an assassin at that time. I only saw a flying insect fly into Uncle's wine cup." Ding Yi and Yuan Baozhen did not expect this answer. The two of them were stunned at the same time. Yuan Baozhen asked, "Flying insect?" "That's right, you don't know, but my uncle loves cleanliness," He Yan sighed. "If his clothes are stained with dust, he will immediately change them. If his shoes are stained with mud, he will never wear them a second time. There are flying insects in the wine cup. If he drank it, I don't know how angry he would be. At that time, I only wanted to remind him not to drink it and change the cup. Who knew that there would be an assassin? I was also shocked." "So this was the reason?" Yuan Baozhen was somewhat skeptical. At that time, Chung Lisu's scream was so shrill and anxious that it made his heart tighten. So this was the reason? But if it was not for this reason, how could he, a young master who did not know anything, predict the future and know that there was a problem with the wine? Perhaps it was really a coincidence that he had stumbled upon it? Yuan Baozhen did not know what to feel. Who would have known that a good game of chess would be ruined here? His heart was half angry and half suspicious. When he looked at Cheng Lisu again, he only felt that this young man was annoying. But Cheng Lisu clearly did not know how annoying he was. Instead, she seemed to be particularly close to Yuan Baozhen because he came to see him. She smiled and said, "I heard from my uncle that Imperial Censor Yuan came from Shuajing?" "That's right." "Then does Imperial Censor Yuan know General Fei Hong He Rufei?" she asked. When she said this, the room was silent for a moment. Ding Yi, who was very close to He Yan, placed his hand on the long sword at his waist. In an instant, a murderous aura rushed towards him. The young man did not make up his mind. With a smile on his face, he looked in Yuan Baozhen's direction and waited for his answer. After a moment, Yuan Baozhen stared at He Yan's face and asked, "Little Gongzi, why did you suddenly ask about General Fei Hong? Doesn't everyone say that General Fei Hong and my uncle are sworn enemies, and that their skills and achievements are on par? I have never seen General Fei Hong before, so I don't know how his skills are, and I don't know how he looks. Since Imperial Censor Yuan came from Shuajing, and is also an official of the same court, perhaps you have seen him before. I heard that he used to wear a mask. Now that he has taken off his mask, what do you think? Is he good-looking?" The Cheng Lisu in front of him spoke in a light tone. She did not know that the bodyguard beside her had almost pulled out his sword and asked the same question as those naughty young men from Shuajing. Yuan Baozhen let out a sigh of relief. For a moment, he thought that this young man had discovered something and almost wanted to kill him. "I have seen him before. He is born very handsome. However, he cannot be compared to Military Governor Shao." Yuan Baozhen replied with a smile. "Not as good as my uncle?" He Yan was disappointed and quickly said, "Then, is Imperial Censor Yuan close to General Fei Hong? If they are close, when I return to Shuajing in the future, can you introduce me to General Fei Hong? I have heard many of his deeds and want to see for myself what kind of person he is," she said in a small voice. "But this matter must not be known by my uncle. I am afraid that he will punish me by making me copy books. Little Gongzi, I am afraid you will be disappointed." Yuan Baozhen shook his head and said, "General Fei Hong and I only know each other and are not close. If you want to introduce me, it would be better to have Military Governor Shao introduce you to him." He Yan whispered, "How would I dare to let him introduce me to him?" As she said this, Yuan Baozhen looked at her and suddenly said, "I came today because I was afraid that little Gongzi would be sad because of your eyes. But now that I have seen you, it seems that I worried too much. Little Gongzi does not seem to be very sad." He Yan asked curiously, "Why does Imperial Censor Yuan say this? Last night, I cried for 2 whole hours. If it was not for my uncle scolding me and saying that he would throw me out if I did not shut up, you would not be able to see me now. Moreover, I later understood who I was. I was the young master of the right sector's Naolang residence. Although I didn't know anything, my uncle was the right army's commander-in-chief. As long as my uncle was around, I would definitely be able to see. My uncle said that there will be a godly doctor that can cure my eyes. There will definitely be a godly doctor that can cure my eyes." Her words were full of worship and trust towards Xiaoju. Yuan Baozhen was speechless and did not know what to say. He Yan's words were watertight and did not find any loopholes. But he was still worried. Little Gongzi is right. Military Governor Shao is omnipotent and will definitely find a way. It seems that I was too narrow-minded. He smiled and stood up. "Since that is the case, I should also leave. Little Gongzi is not feeling well right now. You should go lie down on the bed." He looked around. "Why is there not a single servant in this room? I was the one who asked them to leave." He Yan smiled. "After what happened last night, I do not dare to use the servants in this fu. Does Imperial Censor Yuan dare to use them? You are very brave." Yuan Baozhen smiled. "But you cannot see right now. Do you need someone to serve you?" "Fei Nu will serve me. Moreover, I can find my way there." She smiled. "Imperial Censor Yuan, do not worry. I can do it myself." Yuan Baozhen smiled. "Little Gongzi is clever. Then I will leave first." After saying this, he turned and left. But when he reached the door, He turned back and stood at the door without moving. In the room, Dingy did not move a single step. When the two of them came in, the one talking was Yuan Baozhen. Dingy did not speak. He easily thought that there was only one person in the room. Yuan Baozhen stood at the door and gave Dingy a look. He stood up and walked shakily into the room. Dingy was right in front of her. She could feel that there was an email piercer hidden in her sleeve. She had taken it from Yingyu last night. She had already thought about how to dodge if Dingy attacked her. She also knew how to stab this email piercer into his heart. The young man's eyes were covered with cloth. He did not reach out to take it. She held onto the wall and slowly walked into the room. The people in the room were probably afraid that she would trip because of her inconvenience, so they moved all the chairs to the side. From the table to the bed, there was nothing. She only needed to hold onto the wall and feel her way through. Ian did the same. She walked until she was close to the bed. Dingy bent down and placed a stool in front of her. The young man did not feel anything and took a step forward. With a clang, he tripped and fell forward. He fell at a bad time and hit the edge of the bed. He screamed and his forehead immediately became swollen. He fell to the ground. Half of his body was on the ground, and his hand was scraped. He did not get up for a long time. Dingy shook his head at Yuan Baozhen. Yuan Baozhen saw this and turned to leave. Dingy also quietly followed him. Yen was the only one left in the room. He uncovered his head and screamed in pain. No one saw, but she sneered. Chapter 97. Yen did not sit up immediately. Instead, she held her head and groaned. She was thinking about something else. Yuan Baozhen was really here to test her. First, he wanted to know how she found out about the wine. Second, he wanted to see if she was really blind. This person was very meticulous. He even asked Ding Yi to put a stool there to see her reaction. If Yan's response wasn't right in the slightest, this pair of master and servant would have other thoughts. She had excellent hearing and heard Ding Yi's movements. She also knew that Yuan Baozhen did not leave immediately. That was why she was here to cooperate with them and act out what Yuan Baozhen wanted to see. But Yuan Baozhen was testing her. Wasn't she also testing Yuan Baozhen? They obviously had a close relationship, but she insisted that they only knew each other. He Rufei's servant Ding Yi would not follow him here. There was indeed something wrong with the wine. But what puzzled Yen the most was what role He Rufei played in this matter. Did he and Yuan Baozhen conspire to murder Xiaoju? Or was it He Rufei who instigated it? Or were they working for someone else? Next, she had to follow Ding Yi and find out what the two of them were up to. There was no movement outside. Yan's io became louder. There was movement behind her. It was Fei Nu's voice. He asked, "What happened to you?" "I hurt my head just now." Yan blankly reached out to grab him. "Brother Fei Nu, come and help me. I sprained my ankle." Slave Fei answered and went forward to help her onto the couch. Yan's eyes were covered with a cloth. Therefore, Fei Nu could not see her emotions from her eyes. Naturally, he did not know what Yan was thinking. In fact, the act just now was not only for Yuan Baozhen, but also for Fei Nu. Yuan Baozhen and Ding Yi were so focused on testing Yan that they didn't notice that Fei Nu had been standing at the door and listening to what was going on inside. They did not notice, but Yan did. Fei Nu only ordered people to remove the bowls and plates. Why did he leave for so long? It was nothing more than the mantis stalking the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind. Yan didn't know why, but he always felt that Xiaoju and Fei Nu didn't trust her. This wasn't a big deal. Of course, they wouldn't trust someone they didn't know. However, she sensed that not only did Xiaoju not trust her, but she was also wary and suspicious of her. Yan was also confused. She didn't think she had done anything that would make people suspicious. Now that she was here, she didn't even have any interactions with Yuan Baozhen in the past. She didn't know why she was suspected. Forget it, if they were suspicious, then so be it. One act was enough to deceive two people. Yan said, "Brother Fei Nu, where did you go just now? That imperial censor Yuan came to sit for a while, but you didn't see him." Fei Nu avoided her question and only asked, "How's your head?" Yan touched her head and said, "It's swollen. I don't know when it'll go away." She sighed heavily again. "This is really a trap. I think that little brother of mine is quite smart. It's right that he didn't come. This is much more dangerous than being forced into a marriage. If Chung Lisu was here, she wouldn't know what would happen. Sit down and rest for a while. Fei Nu's voice was emotionless. I'll be at the door. Call me if you need anything. He left again. Ian lay on the bed. She was covered with a cloth, so Fei Nu couldn't see her expression. She also couldn't see Fei Nu's reaction. She thought that he was expressionless. She didn't know when Xiao Ju would come back. By the time Xiao Ju came back, it was already late at night. On this day, He Yan and Fei Nu stayed in the Sun residence and didn't do anything. The wine and dishes that Sun Xiangfu sent over had to be tested for poison with silver needles. Because He Yan couldn't see, she simply slept in the room for the whole day. Fei Nu also stood guard at the door for the whole day. When Xiao Ju came back, Fei Nu, who was sleeping on the bed, immediately woke up. He got up and walked to Xiao Ju's side saying, "Young master." Xiao Ju indicated for him to follow her into the room. Fei Nu glanced at He Yan on the bed. Under the dim light, she was sleeping soundly. When Fei Nu and He Yan entered the room, they didn't see the youth sleeping soundly on the bed. Her hands were gently tapping the mattress under her body. He Yan obviously wasn't asleep. After sleeping for the whole day, how could she continue to sleep at night? She wasn't a pig raised in the village. Second young master Xiao obviously had something to say to his confidant. She guessed that Fei Nu would also tell this commander-in-chief everything that happened here today. He Yan didn't have the guts to listen to the master and servant whispering to each other. Xiao Ju wasn't Yuan Baozhen. She knew real martial arts. Once she exposed herself, there would be too much trouble, and the losses would outweigh the gains. However, she could imagine what Fei Nu would say to her. He Yan felt that she could fool Fei Nu with her acting today. As for whether she could fool Xiao Ju, she didn't know. In the room, the lamp was lit. Xiao Ju placed her sword on the table and sat down on the chair in front of the table. "Young master, Yuan Baozhen came by today," Fei Nu said. Xiao Ju looked up and asked, "What's the matter?" "From what I can see, he came specially to look for He Yan." Yuan Baozhen said a few words to He Yan. He recounted the conversation between Yuan Baozhen and He Yan to Xiao Ju. In the end he said, Yuan Baozhen seemed to be testing He Yan. Xiao Ju pondered for a moment and asked, "What do you think?" From He Yan's answer, it seems that he doesn't know Yuan Baozhen. There were no flaws. However, it could also be that the two of them were acting together. Overall, He Yan's suspicions can be cleared for the time being. Cleared? Xiao Ju curled his lips into a smile and said, "Slave Fei, the liar in our house has even deceived you." Fei Nu was startled and didn't understand. Don't forget, when He Yan competed with Wang Ba in archery, she once blindfolded herself and shot a bird in the sky. Do you think that someone with such good hearing wouldn't be able to tell that Yuan Baozhen's bodyguard placed a stool in front of her? Young master, you mean? He could have avoided the stool, but he still fell. Firstly, he deceived Yuan Baozhen, and secondly, he deceived you. Xiao Ju said casually. This person is very good at deceiving people. What was a blind person like? Stumbling and panicking, when there was no one around. They couldn't do anything. They were very pitiful. This was the impression that ordinary people had of a blind person. Yuan Baozhen and Fei Nu were ordinary people. Naturally they would think the same. Seeing He Yan fall and be helpless, it was exactly what a blind person would look like. But He Yan was not an ordinary blind person. Even if she was blindfolded, she could still shoot better than other people. Yuan Baozhen had never seen He Yan shoot an arrow while blindfolded, but Fei Nu had seen it before. Even so, even he overlooked this point. Deceiving you is secondary. The person he wanted to deceive the most was Yuan Baozhen. Otherwise, he wouldn't have said that there were flying insects in the wine. There were flying insects in the wine? How could this be possible? It was not summer now, and the Sun residents paid special attention to this. There were wormwood sachets everywhere to prevent insects from flying into the wine. It was not easy for He Yan to think that there were flying insects in the wine. Young master, is he Yuan Baozhen's man? Fei Nu also didn't understand. If he was Yuan Baozhen's man, why did he have to be so suspicious? He doesn't look like it, but I can't say for sure. There was a brush, ink, paper, and inkstone on the table. Sun Xiangfu had specially arranged it. He didn't like these things, but he liked to pretend to be cultured. Xiaoju found a brush and paper, and wrote a few words. His handwriting was elegant and strong. It was very beautiful. When it landed on the paper, it was as bright as a person's. I want you to bring a letter to Lin Shuanghe. Young Master Lin. Fei Nu's calm face finally showed a surprised expression. Young Master, didn't you not allow young Master Lin to come to Liangzhou? He suddenly thought of something and said in disbelief. Could it be Yan? The handwriting quickly dried in the wind. He put the letter into the envelope and looked down. It's for him, but not entirely for him. Fei Nu didn't ask any more questions. He put the letter away and tiptoed out. Xiaoju saw this and laughed. Why are you so careful? The people outside have already woken up, he said. Young Master? Fei Nu was stunned. Forget it. When it comes to deceiving people, you are no match for him. Xiaoju shook his head and said lazily. In any case, he doesn't have the guts to come in. Fei Nu stood in place and thought for a while before leaving the room. After he left, Xiaoju flicked the wick of the lamp. In the light, his eyes were bright and oppressive. Su Jingfu. The night swallowed his whispers. When Yan woke up, Xiaoju was already gone. He seemed to be very busy these 2 days. When Yan woke up, he had already left. When he came back, Yan was already asleep. They didn't even see each other. She guessed that what Xiaoju was doing was related to what happened at the banquet at the Sun residence. However, she couldn't go with him and could only sit here and wait. But she didn't want to sit here and wait. Fortunately, after noon, when it was almost evening, Slave Fei also went out for some matters. Before he left, he reminded her to stay in the room and not go out to avoid trouble. Yan nodded in agreement. In fact, Yan thought that the Sun residence was not as murderous as Fei Nu said. From what happened at the banquet, it could be seen that the assassin's target was only Xiaoju. Since Xiaoju wasn't around, the manor was 70% safer. The remaining 30% might not be able to defeat her. This morning, Yan took off the cloth covering his eyes. It was because the cloth had been used for 2 days and needed a new one. However, the physician in the residence was scared away by Xiaoju last time, and there was no one to make a new cloth for Yan. Although he took off the cloth after 2 days, everyone in the residence believed that Yan was blind and didn't treat him as an ordinary person. Yan was the only one. When she took off the cloth, she felt that the sky was too bright, and she still felt uncomfortable. Yesterday morning, when she took off the cloth in front of Fei Nu, her expression didn't change. God knows how much she wanted to cry at that time. It was too dazzling. In fact, Yan had never been blind. That day at the banquet, the manservant who received Ding Yi's order had indeed thrown a handful of powder-like things at him. She blocked it, and at that time her eyes did hurt. After all, she had been blind once before, and her eyes were more sensitive than ordinary people. Subconsciously, she felt that her vision was blurry and she suspected that she was going blind. But when she calmed down, she felt that she had actually avoided it. At night, when there was no one around, Yan secretly took off the cloth, and she could see the light of the lanterns outside. It was just a mistake because she was too nervous. She originally wanted to explain the next day, but when the next day really came, she changed her mind. A blind person shouldn't be a threat. It was much easier to be a non-threatening person and get close to Yuan Baozhen than to be smart enough to discover the poison in the wine, young Master Cheng. So when she took off the cloth in front of Fei Nu, Yan didn't show the slightest bit of abnormality. She had been a blind person for a long time. She could imitate all the reactions a blind person should have, and no one could find anything wrong with it. But she didn't expect that Yuan Baozhen would be so cautious, and especially come to confirm whether she was really blind or not. Because of this, Yan was in a difficult position. But at the same time, she was even more certain that He Rufei, Ding Yi and Yuan Baozhen had something going on. He Rufei must have been involved in the murder of Xiaoju. Although she didn't know what kind of grudge He Rufei had with Xiaoju, the enemy of an enemy was a friend. Now she and Xiaoju were on the same side. She had to find out what Yuan Baozhen and Ding Yi wanted to do. Yan tied up her hair and quietly went out. Everyone knew that young Master Cheng couldn't see. Other than going to the toilet, he stayed in his room every day. Moreover, these days everyone in the residence was in danger. Sun Xiangfu was busy cleaning himself, so Hien didn't have anyone to care about her. Luckily, she had a good memory. On the first day she came to the Sun residence, she already knew the way to the Sun residence. But Hien didn't know where Yuan Baozhen lived. Just as she was in a dilemma, she saw someone walking quickly through the garden. It was none other than Ding Yi. Good timing. Hien praised her in her heart and quickly followed her. She moved very quickly and was used to finding a room to hide. Of course, because the Sun residence was luxurious, there were rockery and bonsai everywhere, giving her many places to hide. Along the way, no one discovered her. Finally, Ding Yi stopped in front of a room and pushed the door open to enter. For some reason, the room Yuan Baozhen lived in was very far away from the main hall. It was almost remote, and there weren't many people around. It was autumn. In the evening of Liangzhou, the sky was already dark. Hien estimated for a moment and jumped onto the roof. She was small and thin. The roof had sharp corners and cornices, and there were carved stones everywhere. Hien lay on the roof and almost merged with it. She carefully searched for a long time and finally found a gap. She didn't know if it was because of the rain or the hail, but the fragile crystal roof was broken and there was just a gap. Hien put her face close to it and listened to the movement inside. Ding Yi walked into the room. "How is it?" Yuan Baozhen asked. Ding Yi shook her head. "I lost him." "You weren't discovered by him, right?" "No." Ding Yi hesitated. "I didn't dare to get too close in case he discovered me. He left early today and went to the east of the city. I looked for him in the vicinity but couldn't find him." Yuan Baozhen's expression was uncertain. "This Xiaoju, what is she trying to do?" "She clearly got into trouble in the Sun Mansion, but she wants to stay in the mansion and go out every day. I don't know what she's doing. I keep feeling that something is wrong." Hien heard this and became suspicious. Did Yuan Baozhen ask Ding Yi to follow Xiaoju? "Has the Yamen matter been settled?" Yuan Baozhen asked. "Ying Yue and the others are dead. There's no evidence. The spy in the mansion is also dead. Since Sun Xiangfu was notified in advance, there shouldn't be any problems." Ding Yi paused. "I still don't understand. How did Cheng Lisu know about the spy's movements? He was also the one who discovered the cup of wine. You think there's something wrong with him? But you saw it yesterday. He can't see. He's just an ordinary young man." "Even so, I still feel that something is wrong." Ding Yi couldn't put his finger on it. That young man should be blind. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to act so well. The servants in the mansion also said that he stayed in his room all day and was guarded by Xiaoju's bodyguards. From the looks of it, he really did look like a weak rich young master. However, Ding Yi still remembered that during the banquet, Cheng Lisu had looked at him. That gaze was fleeting, as if he had just glanced at someone else. However, at that moment, Ding Yi seemed to have felt the shock and anger in the young man's eyes. When he looked again, the young man had already looked away. It was as if what he saw was just an illusion. But was it really an illusion? Their conversation was lively, but Hien's heart was filled with shock as he listened. "Ying Yue is dead. There's no evidence," she told Sun Xiangfu. This meant that the assassination of Xiaoju was indeed done by Yuan Baozhen. Perhaps Sun Xiangfu had even helped him. Now that Xiaoju was still living here, wouldn't it lead others to continue to harm her? As she was thinking, she heard Yuan Baozhen ask, "Has brother He sent you any letters recently?" Hien thought that this brother He was most likely referring to He Rufei. "No. Before master left, he told me that I must succeed this time." Ding Yi said, "If I fail, I won't be able to answer to Prime Minister Su." "Prime Minister Su?" Hien's heart skipped a beat. He Rufei asked Ding Yi to assassinate Xiaoju because he wanted to answer to Prime Minister Su. In other words, He Rufei was working for Prime Minister Su? But who was Prime Minister Su? She knew the current Prime Minister, Su Jingfu, but she didn't know if he was the Prime Minister Su that Ding Yi mentioned. "We've already failed." Yuan Baozhen was half angry and half disheartened. "I didn't expect Xiaoju to be so difficult to deal with. Now he's starting to suspect me. I don't know if I'll have another chance in the future. Xiaoju is difficult to deal with, but he still has a blind nephew." Ding Yi said, Since this person is blind and doesn't know anything, I think we can use him. What do you want to do? Yuan Baozhen asked. Don't forget what I used to do. Ding Yi said. I have my ways. Before he could finish, he heard a creaking sound above his head. A small piece of green fell. Ding Yi's expression changed. Who's there? He jumped out. Under the moonlight, someone's figure flitted past like a swallow. In the blink of an eye, she disappeared into the night. He Yin complained in her heart. Sun Xiangfu pretended to be cultured. Even the roof tiles were made of green crystal tiles. It looked good, but it was very fragile. Even a weak person like her would accidentally collapse if she leaned on it. What kind of logic was this? He Yin suspected that Sun Xiangfu was pretending to be weak. The purpose of using these tiles was so that no one could eavesdrop from the roof. If it was a normal man, he would have fallen down as soon as he leaned on the roof. Ding Yi was still chasing in the distance, but for some reason he didn't call out to the servants of the Sun family to catch the assassin. Perhaps he was hiding something. He Yin was familiar with the roads here. She hid left and right, thinking about the conversation she overheard. Yuan Baozhen came to Liangzhou, Ding Yi came to Liangzhou, and He Rufei came to Shuajing. They all had one goal, which was to assassinate Xiao Ju. And the three of them had to answer to Prime Minister Su. Now Xiao Ju was alive and well. All the men of sacrifice were killed. Yuan Baozhen was not satisfied and wanted to come again. Moreover, Ding Yi had his eyes on her, the blind and useless person. He wanted to use her, the blind person, to kill Xiao Ju. No matter how she thought about it, when one person used another person, it was nothing more than instigating a rebellion, holding her hostage, or being a weapon. Cheng Lisu and Xiao Ju were uncle and nephew. Yuan Baozhen probably wouldn't think of instigating a rebellion. So there were only two possibilities left. He Yin was holding her hostage. First, He Yin didn't think that Ding Yi could defeat her. Second, she wasn't the real Cheng Lisu. Xiao Ju probably wouldn't do something so stupid as to surrender for the sake of her nephew. As for the third possibility, being a weapon, they forgot the most important thing. He Yin was not blind. She had been on guard against Ding Yi since a long time ago. While she was thinking about this, He Yin had already seen the house she lived in. The lights were on. Fei Nu probably came back. He Yin felt around her body. She put the cloth in the room. She thought about how she still had to act for Fei Nu later, and felt a headache coming on. She was afraid that Ding Yi would catch up with her. She jumped forward and entered the room at lightning speed. When she turned around, she almost choked on her own saliva. There was a wooden bath in the room. Xiao Ju was sitting in the middle of the bath. The beauty was bathing. His skin was ice cold and his bones were jade white. The moonlight slipped in through the cracks in the window. His black hair was covered with a layer of cold and clear color. He looked particularly attractive. His shoulder blades were very beautiful. For a moment, He Yan's mind drifted elsewhere. She thought, when was the last time she saw this person take off his outer clothes in the Xianchang pavilion? The men in the army were mostly tough and rough. Su Zhiheng was probably considered gentle. However, Xiao Ju was different from them. He was handsome and strong. His waist was especially attractive. No matter if it was a man or a woman, they would all praise him when they saw him. It turned out that this person was not only good-looking, but his body was also different from ordinary people. No wonder he was called Commander Jade-Faced. He lived up to his name. The fog made it difficult to see his expression. Xiao Ju probably didn't expect that someone would suddenly barge in at this time. She immediately stood up, and with a splash, the sound of water was clear and crisp. He Yin. This time it was over. He Yin saw everything he should and should not see. At this moment, she was cursing herself in her heart. Why did she wear a cloth every day when she went out? Why didn't she wear it today? Or perhaps it would be better if she could not see. Second young master Xiao quickly picked up the clothes on the shelf and put them on. He looked at her coldly. The room seemed to have become colder. He was about to speak when he saw the young man in front of him open his hand and close the door. His eyes were calm and seemed to widen. However, nothing was reflected in his eyes. He said, Who is it? Second young master Xiao laughed at this clumsy acting. Chapter 98. Uncle? Are you uncle? He Yin revealed a surprised expression. Like a blind man touching an elephant, he opened his hands and scratched wildly. Where are you? Xiao Ju coldly looked at him, acting and mocked. Don't you know how to shoot arrows blindfolded and identify people by their sounds? What, can't you tell where I am? He Yan's movements suddenly stopped. After a moment he smiled embarrassedly. I was afraid that you would feel awkward. Uncle, are you bathing? The youth opened his eyes and stared unblinkingly in front of him. Even though he had already put on his clothes, Xiao Ju still felt uncomfortable. Where did you go just now? He asked. The latrine. Brother Fei Nu went out. I didn't dare to trust the servants here, so I went out to relax. Uncle, why are you back so early today? He Yan asked. Brother Fei Nu hasn't come back yet? Xiao Ju turned sideways and put on his outer clothes, saying, Don't run around here. He Yan looked at him and thought about the conversation between Yuan Baozhen and his servant. He said, Uncle, have you been investigating the assassination at the banquet these past few days? Did you find anything? Xiao Ju glanced at him and asked, What are you trying to say? You say, Is it possible that someone from this residence harmed you? You see, even though Magistrate Sun said that he didn't know anything, the incident happened in his residence. How could he not know anything? That doesn't make sense, right? There's also Imperial Censor Yuan. He Yan racked his brains and hinted, I think he's very strange. Oh, what's strange about him? Xiao Ju asked. He Yan didn't know how to answer this question. He couldn't say that he went up to the roof and eavesdropped on their conversation. Furthermore, he was blinded by his bodyguard in his previous life. He Yan could only say, Imperial Censor Yuan came to find me once and asked me some strange questions. If you want me to answer, I can only say that my intuition is wrong. Uncle, you should be wary of them. The young man groped for a chair and sat down. He spoke in a serious tone which surprised Xiao Ju. He slowly asked, You want me to be wary of Yuan Baozhen? That's right. Think about it. If they really did harm to you, they would definitely do it again. Uncle, you are usually not in the mansion, so you don't have to worry. But that's not right. You are usually not in the mansion, so why are you still living here? Ian suddenly thought of something. Since he had to live in the Sun residence, he had to go out every day. Wasn't this contradictory? You should spend more time on your eyes instead of worrying about these things, Xiao Ju said calmly. Are you really blind? He Yan's heart skipped a beat. He played dumb and said, Of course. What good would it do me to pretend to be blind? Her words were powerful and resonant. Xiao Ju looked at her again, and felt that all her actions were like that of a real blind person. If she was really pretending, then she was really too powerful. However, this person was used to lying. Otherwise, she wouldn't have even fooled Fei Nu. He Yan saw that Xiao Ju didn't say anything, and was afraid that he would continue to talk about this topic. He smiled and said, Uncle, weren't you bathing just now? Did I disturb you by coming in? Do you want to continue? You can continue. I will guard the door. I can guarantee that no one will come in and no one else will be able to come in. After saying this, he groped for the door and opened it. He went out and sat on the steps outside. He guarded the door like a door god. Xiao Ju. He Yan didn't listen to the movements in the room. He didn't know if second young master Xiao was in the mood to continue bathing. In any case, He Yan's mind was in a mess. Too many things had happened today. He didn't know what to think about first. He Rufei, Prime Minister Su, Yuan Baozhen, and Ding Yi's conspiracy were mixed together. In the end, it looked like Xiao Ju was bathing. Ba ba ba. He Yan scolded. He thought that even if this person wasn't blind after all this, he would probably become blind. Although she was a woman, when she thought about it carefully, she didn't know who had taken advantage of who. It was about the same. The next morning, Xiao Ju disappeared again. After Fei Nu came to bring her food, she also disappeared. He Yan didn't know what the master and servant were doing every day. He Yan sat on the bed and wondered if he should sneak out to follow Yuan Baozhen and his bodyguards. However, after what happened last night, Yuan Baozhen would definitely keep a close eye on the roof. The roof of the Sun family was fragile, and it was not suitable for him to climb it again and again. Who knew that before He Yan could come to a conclusion, Ding Yi came to his door. He stood at the door and said respectfully, Young Master Cheng? Ian looked up. Ding Yi's voice was respectful and polite. Lord Yuan invites you to have tea. What kind of tea? Ian asked casually. I'm quite picky about my tea. We have all kinds of tea. Ding Yi smiled. If young Master Cheng doesn't want to, I'm willing. Ian supported himself on the bed and stood up. I'm really bored here alone. It's rare that Lord Yuan remembers me and accompanies me to relieve my boredom. How can I be so unappreciative? Lead the way. She still had a cloth wrapped around her eyes. Please bring me my bamboo stick. Last night, when Fei Nu came back, he brought back a bamboo stick for Hien. It was neither too tall nor too short. Hien could use it to walk. Although this person looked taciturn, he was actually very considerate. After all, the people in the Sun residence could not be trusted and no one could use them. However, it was really inconvenient for her to walk by herself. It was much better to have a bamboo stick. In the eyes of others, she would look more like a blind person. Ding Yi said, okay. He looked sideways and saw a bamboo stick on the table in front of him. He walked over and took the bamboo stick in his hand. As he walked in front of Hien, he handed it over and said, Young Master Cheng, please take it. Hien shakily reached out to take it. Just as she was about to touch the bamboo stick, Ding Yi suddenly withdrew his hand. Hien's body fell into the air. She was already unsteady on her feet, so her body tilted and she almost fell. Fortunately, she was supported by Ding Yi. Ding Yi said, Are you all right, young Master Cheng? I'm fine, Hien said with lingering fear. I almost fell. Then she said in a sad tone, I can't even carry things now. It's all my fault, Ding Yi said with guilt. I should have directly handed it to young Master Cheng. I caused you to be frightened. Although he said this, his eyes were fixed on Hien, trying to find a flaw in Hien's face. Unfortunately, once both eyes were covered by the cloth, it was really difficult to guess the changes in Hien's expression. He also did not know. Hien looked at the person in front of her and sneered silently in her heart. She had changed the cloth last night. It was a black cloth. She used a needle to make a very small gap near the eyes. It was not much, just a small gap. Through this small gap, she could see the movements of the person outside. In the eyes of an outsider, Hien was just a blind person whose eyes were covered by the cloth. Hien saw Ding Yi's probing and the way he stared at her face. She did not expect that Ding Yi was still suspicious of her. But why? Last night, she had escaped extremely quickly, so Ding Yi shouldn't have discovered any clues. If she had reminded Xiao Ju not to drink the wine at the banquet, then the last time Yuan Baozhen came over, the probing should have ended. Why did he keep probing her like this? Hien could not figure out the reason. She leaned on the bamboo stick and said, Forget it. It's none of your business. Let's go. Let me help you, Ding Yi said. No need, Hien said. If I really can't see anymore, I will have to get used to this kind of life sooner or later. Why do I always need help? Besides, I have the bamboo stick. It's just that I walk slower. I can still keep up. You can just tell me where to go. The young man's voice was stubborn. It sounded like he was competitive even if he was blind. Ding Yi did not find any loopholes. She said, Then please follow me, young Master Cheng. He walked forward. As he walked, he told Hien where there were steps and where to turn left or right. Hien actually walked very slowly. The bamboo stick tapped on the ground, making a duck 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 sound. He was very careful. He walked seriously. Ding Yi was also very patient. He kept guiding her. However, Hien could see from the corner of his eyes that this person was staring at her every tiny movement. He was still trying to find any loopholes that she might make. If she was pretending to be blind, she would more or less show some common habits when walking. People who were close to her would be able to notice that something was wrong if they paid more attention. However, Hien had come prepared. She was wearing a cloth. He could remember the days when she was in the Su family. She had also been blind before. There was no need for her to pretend. She just had to act like she did in the past. Of the two of them, one was pretending to be blind, and the other was observing. They were both on guard against each other. In the end, the one who was pretending to be blind was more skillful. They walked and stopped and did not reveal any loopholes. They had already arrived at the gate of Yuanbao town. Dingyi said, "Young Master Cheng, be careful of the steps. We are here." Ian tapped on the bamboo stick. Following the guidance of the bamboo stick, he walked up the steps shakily and followed Dingyi inside. The room that Yuan Baozhen lived in was on the side of the shade. It seemed that it was very difficult to see sunlight on normal days. The moment she entered, she felt that it was dark. There was even a lamp during the day. There was a teapot on the small table. There were a few teacups and a plate of snacks. Dingyi led her to sit down in front of the small table. Yuan Baozhen raised his head and smiled at Yin kindly. "How have you been these days, young Master Cheng?" "Not bad, not bad." Yin pointed at his eyes. "Except for here. Haven't you gotten better these days?" "No." Yin sighed. "I don't know when the miraculous doctor Uncle found will arrive in Liangzhou." Yuan Baozhen did not take this to heart. He just looked at Dingyi. Dingyi shook his head at him. He meant that he did not find any loopholes along the way. That meant that he was really blind. When he looked at Yin was also looking at him. The gaps in the black cloth were blurry. Yin could not see clearly. However, he felt that this person was different from the person he saw a few days ago. Yin's voice was still very kind. However, probably because he could not see, he did not even bother to pretend to smile. His expression showed that he was anxious. It seemed that something was not going well. That's right. They came here specifically to murder Xiaoju, but they did not succeed. Now they did not even see a trace of Xiaoju every day. It was not going well at all. Yuan Baozhen pushed the teacup in front of Yin. Then he placed the plate of snacks in front of Yin. He smiled and said, "Have some snacks." Yin could clearly see that there were some peanuts sprinkled on top of the snacks. Yin still remembered Cheng Lisu's advice before he left. As long as he ate peanuts, he would get a rash all over his body. That was interesting. Did Yuan Baozhen know that Cheng Lisu could not eat peanuts? Yin felt that there was a high chance that he knew. Then the purpose of this plate of snacks was very clear. He was still testing her. There was a problem if she did not get a rash after eating this plate of snacks. There was a problem if she did not eat this plate of snacks. Yin thought that he was worthy of being tested by Yuan Baozhen again and again. She did not take the cup of tea or the snacks. Instead, she smiled and said in a strange tone, "Lord Yuan, I can't really drink tea and eat snacks." Yuan Baozhen's eyes moved. "Why? After you found out about the banquet, my uncle did not let me eat or drink in the residence. Every day, my food is delivered by slave Fei. Lord Yuan, it's not that I don't trust you, but it's because my uncle is a very strict person. If I eat behind his back and get angry, I can't bear the consequences." The young man's tone was very matter-of-fact. He even did not understand why Yuan Baozhen was so stupid. He said, "I advise Lord Yuan not to eat the food in the residence. Endure the desire for good food. Do not lose your life because of it." The young man's reply was very fast. There was no clue at all. For a moment, it was hard to tell whether he was telling the truth or lying. Yuan Baozhen smiled. "The tea and snacks here are also bought by your servant outside. The food outside is even more dangerous." Yin said earnestly, "If it is really not possible, Lord Yuan, please wait. When my uncle returns to the residence, you can talk to him. Once you have my uncle's approval, I will eat these things, okay?" Yuan Baozhen did not know how to respond. Inviting Xiaoju over to eat tea? Wouldn't that be exposing himself? Yin felt that his words were flawless. Cheng Lisu was a little coward who was scared to death of her uncle. Yuan Baozhen took back his hand and shook his head with a smile. "If Cheng Gongzi does not want to eat, then don't eat." His tone was very disappointed. "It is fine. I came to sit with Lord Yuan. It is also good. Then there is something I am very curious about." Yuan Baozhen looked at the young man in front of him and changed the topic. "Military Governor Xiao cares for you so much. Why did he leave you alone in the Fu these past few days? There is only that bodyguard by your side. Even if it is a bodyguard, he is not always with Cheng Gongzi. If there is a problem in the Fu, does Military Governor Xiao not worry that Cheng Gongzi will be in danger?" When these words were said, Yin was enlightened. He suddenly understood why Yuan Baozhen and his servant would not let him go. Because Xiaoju left her nephew alone in the Sun Fu, This was not a reasonable thing to do. The reason Xiaoju did this was because He Yan knew martial arts. Secondly, she was not the real Cheng Li Su. She did not have any blood relations with Xiaoju. The cold second young master Xiao would not treat her differently. But in reality, if the real Cheng Li Su was here, Xiaoju would definitely think of a way to ensure his safety. Unlike now, where He Yan was left alone in the Sun Manor. Her entire body was written from head to toe as if she was an abandoned concubine who was disliked and banished to the cold palace. He Yan always knew his place. Therefore he did not feel anything was wrong. But in the eyes of others, it was wrong. She suddenly realized that this was the reason why Yuan Baozhen and his servant felt something was wrong and stared at her. But Xiaoju was such a smart person. How could she not have thought of this? He Yan felt that it was impossible. When they were in the Xianchang Hall, He Yan was careless. Xiaoju was very cautious. He Yan did not believe that Xiaoju would be careless. Then there was only one possibility. Xiaoju deliberately made her reveal her flaws. She made Yuan Baozhen and his servant suspicious of her, and tested her again and again. But why? Even if Xiaoju was suspicious of her, at least for now, they should be working together. Could it be this bastard was using her as a shield? She attracted the attention of Yuan Baozhen and his servant, so that Xiaoju would have time to do his own thing? The more He Yan thought about it, the more he felt that it was possible. He wanted to tear Xiaoju into pieces. But she did not show it on her face. She only said innocently, "What danger could there be? My uncle already said that the real danger is not in this Fu. I am very safe in this Fu. Lord Yuan, let me tell you," she said in a small voice. "The real danger is outside the Fu." Outside the Fu? Yuan Baozhen and Ding Yi looked at each other. Then Yuan Baozhen asked He Yan, "What does Chen Gongzi mean?" "I don't know." He Yan spread out his hands as if it had nothing to do with him. "In any case, that is what I overheard my uncle say. If you want to know, you can ask my uncle directly," she added. "I saw that he was outside the Fu these days. Maybe he went to deal with that danger." Fine. Since Xiaoju was using her as a shield, she would kick the target back and draw Yuan Baozhen's attention to the outside of the Fu. Moreover, her image as a useless Gongzi who did not know anything was deeply ingrained in people's minds. Presumably, Yuan Baozhen did not find any flaws. Chen Gongzi really knows how to joke. Yuan Baozhen laughed. "Since this is Military Governor Zhao's private matter, I won't ask." He changed the topic. He Yan's entire body trembled. She saw Ding Yi walk over and lean close to her. He bent down and untied a fragrant ball from her waist. Cheng Li was a very particular young master. He had countless fragrant pouches and jade pendants. He Yan felt that those things were too expensive, and was afraid of losing them. After rummaging for a long time, he finally found a simple fragrant ball. The fragrant ball was only the size of 2 fingers. It was a small ball woven from wisteria. It was hollow in the middle and filled with spices and herbs. When worn at the waist, it gave off a faint fragrance. It was both cute and elegant. Ding Yi held the fragrant ball in his hand. His movements were very light, almost imperceptible. He Yan, who could not see, could only pretend that she did not notice. She did not think that Ding Yi stole the fragrant ball because he liked it. As expected, Ding Yi opened the top of the fragrant ball, took out the original herbs, put them away, and filled it with something else. It could not be anything good. After doing all this, he gently tied the fragrant ball back to He Yan's waist. From beginning to end, He Yan did not move at all. Yuan Baozhen's face revealed a satisfied expression. Ding Yi returned to Yuan Baozhen's side. From the outside, everything looked normal. It was as if nothing had happened. He Yan chatted with Yuan Baozhen about the past in the capital. She felt the fragrant ball at her waist heat up. In her previous life, she had been poisoned. He Yan suspected that perhaps Ding Yi was good at using poisons. She still remembered what she heard when she went to Yuan Baozhen's room last night. They wanted to use her to make trouble for Xiaoju. This was probably their plan. This thing was probably poisonous. The toxicity was not small. If she wore it, she would die. Xiaoju, who was close to her, would also die if she smelled it. Even Fei Nu would not be able to escape. In this way, the family of 3, no, the master and servant, would really die. They could blame it all on the assassin. Perhaps when the coroner came to do an autopsy and found that she was not the real Cheng Li Su, the assassin would pretend to be Cheng Li Su and secretly kill the right army commander. Yan shivered. She could not let this happen. She said, "Lord Yuan, I need to go to the toilet. I want to go to the toilet first." Xiao Ju walked into the Sun residence. Fei Nu followed closely behind him. It seemed that he had been waiting for him for a long time. "Young master," Yuan Baozhen asked He Yin to leave. He said. Xiao Ju put his sword on the table and turned around. He said casually, "They are probably still probing. If they can't find young master, they can only start with He Yin." Xiao Ju smiled noncommittally. He Yin was originally a shield that he had sent out to create a diversion. Without two tails, it would be more convenient for him to do things. Everyone thought that he had left the residence. In fact, today was the only day he left the residence. He had been in the Sun residence hiding in the dark. It was just that no one noticed. "Young master, will He Yin find out what you did?" "He should have already found out. But he can only lie." Xiao Ju said, "This person has been lying since the first time he met Yuan Baozhen, although I don't know why." He Yin dealt with it well. The better he dealt with it, the harder it was to find any flaws and the more suspicious Yuan Baozhen would be. Because Xiao Ju had left his nephew in the Sun residence, this was a matter full of flaws. Young master used Yuan Baozhen to test He Yin, and used He Yin to test Yuan Baozhen. But what if they are in cahoots? Up until now, other than the assassination attempt at the Sun residence's banquet, Xiao Ju had stayed out of it. He Yin and Yuan Baozhen were testing each other. This was the perfect opportunity to find out the origins of the two people. It was killing two birds with one stone. If they are in cahoots, then we can catch them all in one fell swoop. Xiao Ju said calmly. Originally, this matter was going to end soon. Fei Nu was silent. After a moment, he seemed to have thought of something and said, "He Yin went to Yuan Baozhen's room today. Yuan Baozhen's bodyguard changed the incense ball that He Yin was wearing." Xiao Ju raised his eyebrows. He didn't notice? "No. It was just an act. I'm afraid that the incense ball is poisonous. Commander-in-Chief, you should stay away from him today." Xiao Ju looked out of the window and suddenly said, "He Yin should be back at this time. What is he doing outside?" Just as he finished speaking, he heard a servant from the Sun residence running in breathlessly. As she ran, she said, "It's not good, it's not good." Fei Nu opened the door. "What's not good?" The servant stammered, "Young Master Cheng." Young Master Cheng fell in the latrine. Chapter 99. Outside the washroom, there was already a circle of maids. The leading maid said worriedly, Young Master Cheng, are you all right? Can you let us in?" What answered her was the young man's exasperated voice. "No, you're not allowed to enter. All of you stand outside." The maidservants exchanged glances with one another. That was true. This young master from Shoa City usually looked so good. Now that he had fallen into the toilet, he would definitely be in a bad state, and would not want others to see him in such a state. However, they couldn't just leave him like this. The maids were so anxious that they were about to go bald. He Yin stood in the side room and sighed silently. To be honest, the Sun family's lavish decorations were very exquisite. In fact, the washroom was already very clean. However, she only did this to get rid of the incense ball that Ding Yi put on her waist. Young Master Cheng, who fell into the toilet, must have washed his entire body. Even if it was an incense ball, after such an incident, it could only be thrown away. Yuan Baozhen and his servant asked reasonably. They couldn't find any problem with it. If a person had to put a dirty incense ball on their body after a trip to the toilet, then they would be sick. However, He Yin looked at the stains on her body through the cloth. The sacrifice she made was too big. Cheng Li Su, this child, didn't seem to be very smart. She didn't think that she was the real smart one. These dirty and tiring jobs were now all done by He Yin. What was this called? She thought in her heart. Suddenly, she heard someone shout from outside. Young Master Cheng, come out. Military Governor Xiao is here. Xiao Ju is here? He Yin originally thought that Fei Nu would come to pick him up. Why did Xiao Ju come back? He came back so early today? Before she could think clearly, she heard Xiao Ju's voice from outside. Chung Lisu come out. Hiyan. Why was she always in such a sorry state every time she met Xiaoju? Hiyan took a deep breath and walked out shakily with the help of the bamboo stick. Everyone outside held their breaths. The young man's clothes were stained, and his hair was a little messy. His eyes were covered with a black cloth, and his expression couldn't be seen, but his mouth was flat. As soon as she came out, she hurriedly complained in a direction. Uncle, you're finally here. If I wasn't lucky, you would have a nephew who fell to his death in the toilet. Xiaoju. Hiyan took a step forward and Xiaoju dodged sideways. Hiyan loved cleanliness the most. It was probably the biggest concession that he could make by tolerating his disgust, and coming here to pick up Hiyan. Fei knew, bring him back and wash him clean. Xiaoju couldn't stand the smell on Hiyan's body and turned to leave. Hiyan cursed in his heart. Look, is this something a human would do? Who did she fall into the toilet for? Xiaoju was really an ingrate. Fei Nu came over to help Hiyan. This person also followed Hiyan closely. Hiyan fell into the toilet and even used a handkerchief to help him. Hiyan was speechless. Hiyan didn't need to remind him this time. Fei Nu ordered someone to bring hot water and a wooden basin for bathing. He said to Hiyan with a wooden face, "Go in and wash up." "You're not going to help me bathe?" she asked tentatively. "You have a fiancé. It's not convenient." Tsk. Time really reveals a person's heart. Hiyan couldn't be bothered to pay attention to him. He trembled as he closed the door and jumped into the bathtub. Thinking about it, she really couldn't accept it. The dignified General Fei Hong had to jump into the toilet to avoid disaster. If this was seen by her subordinates and colleagues in the past, they would definitely laugh at her. However, Yuan Baozhen also didn't expect that the incense ball he gave her would be useless before he even saw Xiaoju. After all, if the sky wanted to rain and people wanted to fall, no one could stop it. Outside the room, Fei Nu squatted down and used a branch to fiddle with the dirty clothes that Hiyan threw on the ground. A round incense ball rolled out from the clothes. Fei Nu used the branch to touch the incense ball and said, "This should be it." Xiaoju glanced at the incense ball on the ground and didn't say anything. "Young master, did he do it on purpose or unintentionally?" Fei Nu was also a little confused. If Hiyan accidentally fell into the toilet and caused the incense ball to be useless, it was too much of a coincidence. But if he did it on purpose, if he and Yuan Baozhen were together, why would he do it? Even if it was a trick, it was too real. He did it on purpose. But, he curled his lips and smiled. It wasn't clear whether it was disdain or surprise in his eyes. It was very complicated, as he said. He can even think of such a method. He really doesn't care about trifles. This was also true. Who would have thought that Hiyan would fall into the toilet pit? Perhaps even Yuan Baozhen himself wouldn't have thought of it. Hiyan's actions were really unimaginable. Any decent person would not think of such a method. If he did it on purpose. Fei Nu looked at Xiaoju and said in surprise, "Young master, are you saying that Hiyan can see?" Xiaoju raised her eyebrows and said, "Most likely." Then why did he pretend that he couldn't see? Fei Nu was a little puzzled. Was it to deceive us or to deceive Yuan Baozhen? Both. Xiaoju said slowly. He might not be on the same side as anyone. Just like how Xiaoju was on guard against Hiyan while coldly watching Yuan Baozhen's act, Hiyan was very likely to keep himself out of the matter. She was probably watching him and Yuan Baozhen fight as if she was watching a play. While deceiving Yuan Baozhen, she was also deceiving Xiaoju. As for what her purpose was, it was still unclear. "Young master, will Hiyan interfere with our work?" "No," Xiaoju said. "It's almost over." Fei Nu was silent for a moment and said, "The reply from Shuajing will probably arrive tonight. After tonight, he would know what the background of this Hiyan was and what he wanted. As for Yuan Baozhen, his good days were about to come to an end." In the room, Yuan Baozhen almost couldn't believe his ears. He asked the servant who came to report, "What did you say?" The servant of the Sun Manor was startled by his expression and said timidly, "Just now, young Master Qing fell into the toilet. Governor Xiao took him away." Ding Yi's expression changed dramatically. Yuan Baozhen held his forehead and waved his hand. "You can leave." The servant left. Yuan Baozhen slammed the table. Bastard. He didn't need to think too much to know that the incense ball given to He Yan today was useless. Since he fell into the toilet, his whole body must be covered in filth. He had to be cleaned inside and out. How could the incense ball escape this disaster? Not good. Yuan Baozhen stood up and felt uneasy. Will Xiaoju find out about the incense ball? Xiaoju loves cleanliness. She won't touch it on purpose. But Ding Yi's expression was unpredictable. He Yan might not. You mean he did it on purpose? Don't you think it's too much of a coincidence? We just gave him the incense ball, and he fell into the toilet. It was the same before. The so-called flying insect entering the cup at the banquet was only his side of the story. More importantly, why would Xiaoju leave her nephew alone in the Sun residence? There's something wrong with this person. I have a feeling that Chengli isn't as simple as he seems. If there's something wrong with him, doesn't that mean he knows about our plans from the beginning? Could this be a trap set by Xiaoju? Yuan Baozhen asked. He had a bone-deep fear of Xiaoju. It was probably because he knew that this military governor of the Right Corps would kill without regard for status. I think we should do it tonight. Ding Yi finally spoke after a long time. What? Yuan Baozhen said anxiously. You can't beat a sober Xiaoju. Because of this, they didn't dare to fight with Xiaoju directly. Unfortunately, they failed at the banquet, so it would be difficult to find another opportunity. Originally, they wanted to start with Chengli Su, but this kid was even more strange. He was slippery and unpredictable. Even now, they still couldn't figure out what was going on. Yuan Baozhen's words seemed to have angered Ding Yi. A dark look flashed across his face as he said in a sinister voice, I never planned to start with him. His weird nephew is my true target. Yan washed herself clean. In order to get rid of the smell, she took Chengli Su's perfume and rubbed it all over her body. Only after she changed into clean clothes did she dare to meet Xiaoju. Xiaoju sat in front of the table and stopped her from going forward. Stay 10 feet away from me. Yan rolled her eyes in her heart, but she smiled and said, Uncle, I'm clean. If you don't believe me, you can smell me. She tried to go forward, but a sword sheath was hanging in front of her. It touched her nose and blocked her way. Through the gap in the black cloth, she could see Xiaoju covering her nose with her sleeve. She looked unhappy and her eyebrows were furrowed as if she had been attacked by a rebel army. Yan spread her hands. Okay. I won't go forward. Second young master Xiao was really fastidious. She didn't know if his fastidiousness could save his life. If she hadn't jumped into the toilet, she didn't know how long the second young master Xiao would have lasted under the poison of the incense ball. Yan felt regret. If she had known, she would have just thrown the incense ball in front of Xiaoju. Let's see if he would still be so picky. She held on to the bamboo stick and found a chair. She sat down and thought for a while before asking, Uncle, how long are we going to stay in this house? Why? Xiaoju said. Do you want to go back? That's not it. I just feel that it's a bit weird. Yan replied. She still wanted to find out more about He Rufei from Yuan Baozhen and Ding Yi. Of course, she couldn't go back so soon. However, it wasn't right to stay here. Yan didn't know what Xiaoju was doing, but Xiaoju's actions had already attracted Yuan Baozhen's attention. Now Yuan Baozhen was looking for trouble with Yan. If this continued, He Rufei wouldn't be able to uncover many of his secrets. Yuan Baozhen might even find out about her plan. How is it weird? Xiaoju said calmly, as if she didn't take her words to heart. Every few days, Imperial Censor Yuan comes to talk to me. Yan went straight to the point. I feel like he's trying to get information out of me. Uncle, aren't you afraid that I'll reveal some secrets to him if I stay here alone? Xiaoju looked at him with a half-smile. What secrets do you have to reveal? Yan. Xiaoju and Fei Nu didn't tell Yan what they were doing in secret. It was obvious that they didn't treat her as one of their own. Even if Yuan Baozhen wanted to get information, Yan really didn't have any secrets to reveal to him. She was just an insignificant person who didn't know anything about this. She said, That's not right either. How can an uncle leave his nephew alone in a wolf's den? Isn't that suspicious? Who knew if Yuan Baozhen would make another sachet for her? She couldn't fall into the toilet again and again. It wouldn't hurt her eyes, it would hurt her brain. Suspicious? Xiao Ju looked down and said slowly, I don't think he's suspicious these past few days. Ian screamed in his heart. That was because she had been lying for him. Anyone would be suspicious of such a clumsy lie. However, Ian could tell that Xiao Ju did it on purpose. She was probably trying to divert the trouble. This person was too black-hearted. She didn't even feel guilty for doing such a thing. She said, Uncle, you've been running around all day. Have you found the culprit yet? When she said this, there was a hint of sarcasm in her voice. Although her eyes were covered, she could imagine the young man rolling his eyes. Xiao Ju replied calmly, I found him. Found him? Ian was stunned. Who is it? You'll find out soon. What did she mean by find out soon? She already knew that the culprit was Yuan Baozhen and his servant. Ian was so anxious that he scratched his head. He couldn't wait to bring Xiao Ju to Yuan Baozhen. Ding Yi pointed at Yuan Baozhen and said to Xiao Ju, It's him. It's him. Catch him. However, she could only play dumb and asked, Uncle, aren't you going to catch him now? It's not time yet. Xiao Ju smiled. Then how long do we have to wait? When the swindler shows up. Ian, what? She didn't understand what Xiao Ju meant. Before she could ask any more questions, Fei Nu had already walked over and pulled her out of the room. He pushed her out of the room and said, It's late. You should rest first. With a bang, he closed the door again. He was really heartless. Ian glared at the door behind him. There was a little person cursing in his heart with her hands on her hips. Not to mention that they were schoolmates in their previous lives. In this life, they had dealt with assassins together. They could be considered as half-life friends. What was with Xiao Ju's attitude? With this attitude, there were still so many girls in Dawei who admired him. He was afraid that they were all poisoned by the sorcerer tribe of Nanjiang. She climbed onto the bed and lay flat. She pulled the blanket up and buried her head in it. Forget it. Rest is fine. Anyway, the person Yuan Baozhen wanted to kill is not me. After the autumn equinox, the night became even colder. Ian was woken up by the cold. The Sun family's blanket was made of silk. It was cotton and soft. The embroidery on it was exquisite and round. It was very luxurious and grand. Although this kind of blanket was thin, it was very warm. Ian had slept in the Sun family's house for the past few days. In terms of bedding, he was really impeccable. It was the first time that he was woken up by the cold like today. The black cloth was next to her. Before going to bed, she had taken it off. At this moment, Ian slowly sat up. He wondered if it was too disturbing to ask someone to add a blanket for him in the middle of the night. When he turned his head, he saw that the window next to him was open. The wind was blowing in. No wonder it was so cold. The cold wind blew in. 3 layers of blankets were useless. Ian wanted to get up and close the window. Suddenly he thought of something. He turned his head. Sure enough, under the weak light of the lantern outside the window, Fei Nu's bed was empty. The person was not there. Fei Nu was not there. He did not need to go into the room to know that Xiao Ju was definitely not there. This master and servant pair were probably doing some shady business behind her back. Ian was not surprised. He got off the bed and put on his shoes. He wanted to close the window and go back to sleep. The wind was extremely cold. The branches by the bed swayed and drops of dew fell. Ian reached out to close the window. Suddenly, he saw a black shadow pass by not far away. If someone who did not know martial arts saw it, they would probably think that their eyes were playing tricks on them. It was late at night. Even the dog was asleep. How could there be someone wandering around? Ian's mind flashed. He grabbed his clothes and followed out. That person's skills were not bad. Unfortunately, the person following was Ian. Ian followed very carefully. In her previous life, she had stayed in the vanguard. She had the experience of sneaking into the enemy camp at night. Therefore, doing this kind of thing could be considered easy. This person in black was not Xiao Ju or Fei Nu. Xiao Ju and Fei Nu were very tall, but this person was not. His entire body was covered in night clothes. No clues could be seen. He seemed to be very familiar with the Sun family's courtyard. He avoided places where there might be guards and walked to an abandoned courtyard in the Sun family's residence. In the big Sun family's residence, there was such an abandoned courtyard. It was very far from the main hall. Yan's eyes were blind for a few days. He hid under the window and eavesdropped on the conversations of the servant girls outside. He knew that this courtyard used to be the residence of one of Sun Ling's beloved concubines. This beloved concubine was the youngest daughter of a rice shop owner in Liangzhou. She was beautiful and cute. Unfortunately, Sun Ling took a fancy to her and brought her home. The rice shop owner was originally engaged to a scholar outside the city who lived with his widow. The scholar was dissatisfied with the humiliation of having his wife stolen. He wanted to sue the higher-ups. However, the officials protected each other. Liangzhou City was under the control of the Sun father and son. In the end, the scholar and his widow were both sent to prison and died of illness not long after. When the rice shop owner heard this bad news, she cried every day. Sun Ling was a person who liked the new and hated the old. In just a few days he hated this girl. Seeing her cry every day was an eyesore. He also felt that she had touched his bad luck. He raised his hand and gave the girl to his subordinates. A good girl was tortured to death just like that. It was probably because her death was too tragic. Not long after, there were rumors in the courtyard that someone heard the girl crying at night. Sun Ling felt that it was bad luck and sealed the courtyard. With the rumors of ghosts, no one dared to enter. This courtyard became a deserted courtyard. When Yan heard about this past, he wanted to rush up and twist Sun Ling's head off. There were always people in the world who were full of evil. They had done countless evil deeds. The funny thing was that these people were afraid of karma and didn't dare to move forward because they were guilty. The black-clothed man chose this place. However, it was just a deserted courtyard. Even the servant girls and servants had been removed for many years. What was the use of a place like this? There were many weeds growing in this place. Some of the trees had withered because no one watered them. Some were still alive but no one trimmed them. The branches were in strange shapes and the shadows they cast on the ground were eerie. Other than the wind horn, there was only dead silence. There was no sign of life. It was like a graveyard. The black-clothed man had already arrived in front of the house that the girl used to live in. Yan hesitated for a moment. He didn't enter from the door, but jumped in from the window. He didn't know if Sun Ling had a guilty conscience. There were many Taoist seals on the door and windows of the house. He was probably afraid that the girl's soul would come to find him. He was extra cautious. Yan slipped in through the window. Strangely, there were lights in this empty house. With the lights on, Yan couldn't help but be surprised when he saw the scene in front of him. In this house, there were many Buddha statues on the table and floor. The lamps were the oil lamps on the Buddha shrines. Someone must have come to light them often. Niao niao, Buddha incense burned. However, it didn't make one feel calm. Instead, it made one feel cold. There were Taoist seals outside the house and Buddha statues in the house. The father and son of the Sun family were panicking. Buddhism and Taoism were one. They were not as calm as they looked. Sleeping peacefully on a bed of blood. One would probably have nightmares every day. Yan sneered in his heart. Since they were so afraid, why did they do so much evil? It was obvious that the evil in people's bones couldn't be changed. At this moment, a dart flew out from the side. It was fast and hurried. Yan dodged to the side and blocked it with a dagger in his sleeve. Dang! The dart fell to the ground and knocked over an angry Buddha statue. You're not blind after all. Someone walked out from behind the Buddha shrines. After being chased for so long, this person finally showed his face. It was still an ordinary face without any special features. However, his expression had changed. He was no longer expressionless. His eyes were even shining with excitement. It was as if he had caught an interesting prey. It took you so long to find out. You're the blind one. Yan said. Dingy smiled. His smile was a little strange. He said, "You're really brave. You're alone and you dare to follow me. You purposely opened the window and flashed by. You purposely walked slowly so that I could catch up to you. Didn't you want me to follow you? I've always been a very kind person." Yan also smiled. I hate to let other people's efforts go to waste. She had found out from the beginning. However, since the other party had already set a trap, her disguise had been exposed. There was no need to continue pretending. Moreover, a real master was never afraid of traps. Only those who were not strong enough would hesitate. Ding Yi's expression changed slightly. After a moment he smiled. Did you learn your stubbornness from Xiaoju? I was born with it. You're not Qing Lisu. Ding Yi stared into He Yan's eyes. Who are you? He suspected He Yan even earlier than Yuan Baozhen. It was only because that day at the banquet, before Xiaoju drank, that young man glanced at him. That gaze was a mixture of surprise, anger, hatred, unwillingness, and doubt. It was filled with a myriad of emotions as it pressed towards him. Although He Yan quickly moved his gaze away, Ding Yi still noticed it at that moment. He had never seen this young man before, but he knew very well that this young man had seen him before. Who are you? He asked again. He Yan smiled. Gods and Buddhas were watching silently. The talismans outside the house were calming and exorcising demons. There seemed to be distant Sanskrit chanting "Niao Niao." The young man slowly raised his head. His expression was familiar. His gaze was like lightning, piercing people's hearts. I'm a ghost that you killed, he said softly. I crawled out of the netherworld and came to take your life. Chapter 100. This was an unfamiliar face that Ding Yi had never seen before, and there were no signs of disguise. Before coming to the Sun Mansion, Yuan Baozhen had said that the person who came with Xiaoju was his nephew, the young master of the Right Minister's house, the famous, useless young master, in the Shuo capital. He had only mentioned it casually and did not go into detail. After all, at that time, none of them had expected that this seemingly harmless, useless young master would mess up the entire game. He could not be the real Qing Lisu. The young master raised in the Shuo capital would not have such a fierce gaze. Who was he? Was he Xiaoju's subordinate? But why did Xiaoju's subordinate look at him with such a gaze? It was as if they had a feud. Looking at the young man in front of him, Ding Yi said, Are you trying to act mysterious here? He Yan chuckled. Are you scared? Ding Yi's smile faded. You're so stubborn that it's hard to like you. As he finished speaking, the dagger in his sleeve suddenly grew a few inches, and quickly stabbed towards He Yan. He Yan spun around and flew up. The two figures wrestled together, and the silhouettes reflected on the window were particularly eerie. If the servants of the Sun Mansion were to pass by at this moment, they would probably confirm the rumors of ghosts. He Yan was slightly surprised. At that time, she had fallen into He Rufei's trap, and it was this person in front of her who had given her the medicine that caused her to go blind. She had always thought that Ding Yi was just a servant who worked for He Rufei. Later, when she met Yuan Baozhen, she knew that this person's skills were not bad, but only when she personally fought with him did she realize that Ding Yi was more powerful than she had thought. His skills were far superior to the head assassin Ing Yu. Not only did he have such skills, but he was also very cautious, and would not make a move unless he was completely confident. Therefore, even if it was an assassination at the banquet, he would be the last chess piece, and would not make a move unless it was absolutely necessary. The incense ball was the same. It had to wait for Xiaoju to be poisoned and weak before it could be used to kill her in one shot. Today, Ding Yi had set a trap for He Yan to fall into it. However, he was just thinking that no matter how outstanding He Yan was, he was just a 16-year-old boy. He couldn't be that powerful. This person was both conceited and cautious. He was conceited because he was confident in his skills and abilities. He was cautious because he wanted to be absolutely safe. He was not to be underestimated. Ding Yi was also shocked. He had never seen such an opponent before. It was said that Xiaoju, the commander-in-chief of the Right Army, was skilled in both the pen and the sword, and rarely had a match. He really wanted to fight with her, but He Rufei had repeatedly warned him not to fight with Xiaoju, so he could only make his move secretly and wait for an opportunity to strike. A person like him would never be able to compete with others openly. He was like a rat hiding in a ditch, only able to hide in the dark. Having a body full of martial arts skills, but nowhere to display them was like walking in the night in brocade clothes. In Ding Yi's heart, it was not that he did not feel disappointed. This boy had a mysterious background, and he was eager to try. He wanted to defeat him openly, and then use him to scheme against Xiaoju. This way he could show off his abilities. However, after this fight, he realized that he had been too careless. This boy's skills were not weak. The dagger brushed past He Yan's head. Ding Yi's palm came and hit He Yan's left shoulder, causing her to retreat a few steps and knock over the Buddha statue on the table. "You are being disrespectful to the Buddha statue," He-Yen said. "Aren't you afraid that the Buddha statue will come to you at night?" Ding Yi looked at her unhappily. This boy had been hit by his palm, yet he could still talk. He sneered. "Do you know that a Buddha statue here represents a dead person? You will soon join them." He-Yen reached out and touched her shoulder, revealing a frightened expression. "Don't tell ghost stories at night for no reason." Although she said this, she did not hesitate to stab Ding Yi with the dagger in her hand. Ding Yi dodged, and the dagger flicked his hat off, causing it to fall to the ground. He-Yen sighed in her heart. She did not have any weapons when she came out. This dagger was the one she used to cut the deer meat on the first day she came to the Sun family's banquet. At that time, Xiao Ju was stabbed, and she rushed in to help in a hurry. This dagger used to cut the deer meat, at this moment, seemed too elegant and impractical. Just as she was thinking, Ding Yi came forward again. He-Yen dodged the tip of the dagger, and was hit on the back by his palm. He suddenly felt a sweet taste in his throat. Although Ding Yi used a dagger, he preferred to fight barehanded. He was very confident in his own skills, which was why he did this. "After being hit by 2 of my palms, you are still standing." Ding Yi's eyes moved slightly. "You are the first." He-Yen swallowed the blood in his throat and smiled. "You are also the first to be able to survive 2 of my palms. You have a sharp tongue," Ding Yi said and ran forward again. He-Yen turned around and fled to the window. Lady He's body was still too weak. Perhaps God was like this, and there was no absolute fairness in the world. A woman's mind was more delicate than a man's, and her body was destined to be weaker than a man's. Although she was brave and good at fighting in her previous life, she was now only a 16-year-old girl. Before this spring, she had never learned any martial arts. Her inner strength was not as strong as Ding Yi's. "You want to escape?" Ding Yi laughed, and reached out to grab He-Yan's collar and pulled back. He-Yan's body was pulled back by him, and he fell into the shrine. Incense ashes scattered in the air. "No one will come here at night." Ding Yi laughed. "If no one dares to come, you can only wait for death here." He-Yen stood up, and kicked away a Buddha statue in front of him, and laughed. "I am a dead man." Her casual movements made Ding Yi feel extremely familiar, and he was stunned for a moment. Ding Yi was Hirufei's subordinate, and had been with Hirufei for many years. They had always lived in a courtyard, far away from Shuajing. In the past few years, Hirufei had trained Ding Yi to be a man of sacrifice. Ding Yi was very skilled, knew how to make poison, knew how to disguise, and was very meticulous. Even if he was someone else's subordinate, he was still very outstanding. His skills naturally needed to be put to good use. However, when they returned to Shuajing, Ding Yi's first task was to make a bowl of poison that could blind people and deliver it to young Mistress Su, Hirufei's cousin. At that time, he was very dissatisfied with this task, and did not know why Hirufei gave the order to kill his cousin. The fight between women was a matter of the harem. What use was there for him? It was a waste of talent. Ding Yi felt insulted. Hirufei told him, "Don't underestimate her. You have to be careful, and don't let anyone find out." Ding Yi was very confused. How powerful could a woman be? Why did he have to be careful? Half curious and half disdainful, Ding Yi entered the Su family and stayed there for 3 days. It was during these 3 days that he realized that young Mistress Su was not a simple woman. She was very sensitive. Sometimes, when Ding Yi hid in the dark and wanted to observe her, she immediately noticed that something was wrong. There were a few times when Ding Yi almost exposed himself. In the end, he had no choice but to use the identity of Hirufei's servant to hide in the Su family. Although young Mistress Su was cautious and sensitive, she trusted the He family very much and gave him an opportunity. He still remembered that the bowl of medicine was given to young Mistress Su. When young Mistress Su heard that it was a tonic sent by the He family, she drank it all without thinking. At that time, he did not know what to feel. This kind of woman with such skills and ability, if he fought her openly, he would have to put in a lot of effort to take her life. However, as long as someone close to her took action, she could get what she wanted with just a bowl of medicine. She did not even need to put in much effort. No wonder people always said that the only people who could be deceived and hurt were the people close to them. During those 3 days, Dingy also noticed some of young Mistress Sue's little habits. For example, sometimes when there was something in front of her, like a fallen tree branch, she liked to kick it away. Her kicking seemed casual, but she used a lot of force. This was considered very rude for a woman from a rich family. Young Mistress Sue also knew this, so every time she unconsciously kicked something away, she would react. If there was no one around, she would leave as if nothing had happened. If there was someone around, she would stick out her tongue apologetically. While she was doing this, her face, which was always expressionless, took on a lively expression. It was as if this was the real her. Therefore, after such a long time, Dingy almost could not remember young Mistress Sue's appearance, but he still remembered her kicking away the tree branch in front of her. Just now, the young man in front of him kicked away the Buddha statue at his feet. That action and expression suddenly overlapped with the young Mistress Sue in Dingy's memory. But how could he be young Mistress Sue? After drinking that bowl of medicine, young Mistress Sue became blind. Dingy thought that was the end of it. Until this spring, when he was at the He family, he heard that young Mistress Sue slipped and fell into the pond and drowned. Dingy did not think that she really slipped and drowned, because when He Rufei and the He family heard this, other than the Madam of the Second Branch, they were not surprised at all. They must have known this long ago. What could cause the entire He family to be so ruthless towards a married daughter, and not be at ease even if she became blind, and still want her life? After thinking about it, he gradually thought of a clue. He Rufei lived in another courtyard for many years, and when he returned to Shuajing, he suddenly became General Fei Hong. Dingy thought that the He family found a substitute for He Rufei, and since He Rufei was back, the substitute should die. But what if that substitute was a woman? This sounded inconceivable, but it was not impossible. Especially when Dingy thought about young Mistress Sue's alertness and skills, it was not something that an ordinary woman could do. Especially when they heard that young Mistress Sue was blind, she did not collapse, but tried to listen to sounds to distinguish shapes. Perhaps it was because of this that the He family felt uneasy. What they needed was an obedient blind person. If this blind person could walk, move, and talk, they would not be at ease. The young Mistress Sue that he had blinded might be the famous General Fei Hong. Every time he thought of this, Dingy felt proud and regretful. He was proud that he had quelled the chaos in Xichang, and that the General Fei Hong, who many people were afraid of, had been defeated by a small character like him. Regretfully, although he had schemed against young Mistress Sue, it was not honorable. It was just a bowl of medicine. The light was dim, and the young man's appearance was blurred. Yan's eyes curved. It's not a good habit to be absent-minded during a fight. Her voice was accompanied by her movements. She was as nimble as a ghost, and in the blink of an eye, she was in front of Ding Yi. Pfft! The dagger scratched his sleeve, leaving a bloody mark. Yan had stabbed his arm. Is this all you've got? Ding Yi's eyes flashed with excitement and a little disdain. This young man was definitely not General Fei Hong. General Fei Hong was more than this. He disapprovingly tore off the part of his sleeve that had fallen out. He looked at Yan and laughed. I don't care if you're a human or a ghost, you're going to die today. He rushed towards Yan. The room was very spacious, but because there were Buddha statues everywhere, it seemed narrow and cramped. Ding Yi had been practicing martial arts since he was young. He had a strong inner strength, and his methods were treacherous and dangerous. If not, he would not be He Rufei's trusted aide. Yan had fought with him for 4 or 5 moves. The places where she was hit were covered with wounds. The most serious injury was on her back, which was cut by Ding Yi's dagger. The window was right in front of her, but she could not escape. She was caught and thrown to the ground. Ding Yi grabbed her head and looked at her in confusion. Who are you? Who do you think I am? The young man's lips were bleeding, but his expression was indifferent, as if he did not feel pain. Even his smile did not change. In a trance, Ding Yi thought of young Mistress Sue. This thought made him unhappy. He tightened his grip on Yan's neck and said, If you don't tell me who you are, I'll kill you and bury you here. There are Buddha statues and spells everywhere. You'll never be reincarnated. So, he said softly, as if he was coaxing her. Who are you? The young man's skills were already very good, but he gave Ding Yi a feeling of déjà vu. Ding Yi did not want to miss out on the truth. But Yan heard him and laughed. She laughed so hard that she coughed up some blood. She laughed and said, I've already told you that since I'm an evil spirit that crawled out of hell, I don't care about reincarnation. Moreover, even I can come and go freely. These spells and Buddha statues are just clay and paper. You can't treat them as real. You're so gullible. Does your master Hirufei know that? He actually knew about Hirufei. Dingy was stunned. His expression suddenly changed. What else do you know? He subconsciously reached behind him but found nothing. The young man's face was still in front of him, smiling. Dingy felt that something was wrong. He stabbed the dagger in his hand, but the young man seemed to have suddenly woken up. He gently pulled back and escaped from Dingy's control. She held a small plum blossom dart in her hand. She leaned against the shrine and played with it. She said, "Is this your trump card? You even hid it in your clothes. If you hadn't been beaten up so many times, I wouldn't have found it." Ding Yi's face suddenly darkened. "Are you playing with me?" "I wouldn't dare," the young man smiled. "It's just that I can't fall for the same trick twice. I came prepared. It's not your fault. You hid it very well." In her previous life, this person had brought her a bowl of medicine. Hien had become blind. Seeing him again in this life, she felt that there was something wrong with the wine at the banquet. In Yuan Baozhen's room, Dingy had even given her a fragrant ball. If he wasn't a frequent user of poison, he wouldn't have carried so many poisons with him. Because of this first impression, she paid special attention to this person. Ding Yi's fingertips were black, as if they had been soaked in medicine for many years. His skin was chapped. This was a pair of hands that used poison. Together with the hearts of the assassins, this person must have been a sinister person. He must have hidden poison weapons on him. The dagger was just a distraction. The real trump card was the poison plum blossom dart. It wasn't difficult to fight him in close combat. The difficult part was that if this person was forced to use his trump card, he would be seriously injured or even killed. Hien didn't dare to gamble with his life. She observed Ding Yi and found him to be very conceited. Although he had a dagger, he was used to fighting with her barehanded. He was confident that his skills were not inferior to hers. Therefore, Hien deliberately exposed his weakness and pretended to be weak. He was just an ordinary young man who was slightly skilled but slightly inferior. Sure enough, Ding Yi began to underestimate his opponent in a moment. She successfully stole Ding Yi's trump card. Ding Yi said fiercely, "I must kill you. Do you think you still have the chance?" Hien snapped his fingers. "Now it's your turn to be beaten." The two figures rushed together. The young man, who seemed to have weaker internal strength, was indeed a disguise. Her movements were faster and fiercer. In a moment, she kicked away the dagger in Ding Yi's hand. She lowered her body to avoid his big palm. Without turning her head, she stabbed Ding Yi's waist with the dagger. "You." He widened his eyes in disbelief. Hien kicked his knee, causing Ding Yi to kneel in front of him. Hien grabbed his hair and said, "Now it's my turn to ask questions. Why did Hirufei want to kill Xiaoju? Are you working for Prime Minister Su? What benefits did he promise you? What did Hirufei want to do?" She spoke quickly and anxiously. Ding Yi was stunned for a moment. Then he slowly smiled. "I won't tell you," he said. "If I tell you, you will kill me immediately. Why don't you try and see if there's any way to make me talk?" His smile was even a little shameless. Hien had seen this expression on his face many times. He was not unfamiliar with it. When she was in the Fuyue army, when she captured the enemy's troops, some of the captives would quickly surrender and betray them. Others were men of sacrifice. They would rather die than talk. No matter how they were forced to confess, they would not talk. In the end, it would make the interrogators feel defeated. Ding Yi's expression was like a dead pig that was not afraid of boiling water. Right now his words sounded nice, but he didn't leave any room for negotiation. It seemed like he was leaving a way out, but in reality, he was just toying with Hien. If he was an ordinary person, he would be fooled. Maybe he would let him live. In the future, when Ding Yi's accomplices had the opportunity, they would rescue him. But Hien was not an ordinary person. She would not be fooled. She looked at Ding Yi and suddenly said, "You kept asking me who I was. Did you think of someone?" Ding Yi's expression suddenly changed. He stared at her face and did not say anything. Don't you think it's strange? You and I have only met a few times. How could I know that you have hidden poisonous weapons on you? I was the one who reminded you about the wine at the banquet. How could I know? Dingy sneered. Don't pretend to be mysterious. Kill me if you can. If I don't hate you, I won't kill you. But what's the use of keeping you alive? I live for revenge. Gods and Buddhas can testify that I'm not lying. Hien laughed in a low voice, as if to cater to this strange atmosphere. In the autumn night, there was a sudden clap of thunder. Lightning lit up the room. The benevolent Buddha statues looked at them, as if they were fulfilling a karma from many years ago. You once fed a bowl of medicine to a woman. That woman became blind. The young man said softly. Guess if I'm that woman. She laughed. Dingy struggled. You are. Before he could finish his sentence, his eyes suddenly widened. A trace of blood flowed from his lips, and the light in his eyes quickly faded. The plum blossom dart pierced his throat very deeply. In just a moment he was dead. Hien stood up and looked at the person at her feet. Ding Yi's body lay among the glittering Buddha statues. It was as if she was mocking him. She said in a low voice, You can die here and see if you can be reincarnated. She turned and walked out. Hien could not keep Ding Yi alive. She did not even know where to hide such a person. If Xiao Ju found out and asked her why she was investigating the He family, Hien would not be able to explain. Since he was a man of sacrifice, there was no point in keeping him alive if he did not want to reveal his secrets. Moreover, this person had done many evil things. His death was not to be regretted. Dying here was the best ending for him. After all, this courtyard was haunted. It would take a few days for someone to find his body. Thunder rumbled outside and the autumn rain began to fall. Hien stumbled towards the direction of the house. Although she used herself as bait to lure Ding Yi to let his guard down, she did suffer a lot of injuries. Her body was not as strong as it was in her previous life. Ding Yi was also not an ordinary person. She might have underestimated He Rufei's strength. The wound on her back was drenched by the rain. The blood flowed into the courtyard, and was quickly washed away. Hien felt that all the strength in her body was disappearing. This was probably the most embarrassing situation she had ever been in since she was reborn. Fortunately, when she went out, Xiao Ju and Fei Nu were not around. It had only been a short while, so they probably had not returned yet. She had to quickly go back and change her clothes, pretending that nothing had happened. The house was right in front of her. Hien jumped in through the window. Seeing that there was no one in the house, she was relieved. She muttered in a low voice, Fortunately, I was not discovered. Just as she finished speaking, she heard someone's voice. It's too early for you to be happy. With a paw sound, the room suddenly lit up. Hien's entire body froze. A person was sitting in front of a small table in the middle. He was playing with a fire starter in his hand. The light on the table flickered. That person had handsome eyebrows and neat clothes. He turned his head and glanced at her. You're back? It was Xiao Ju. Hien's heart trembled. She quickly regained her senses and said, Uncle, this is a misunderstanding. I just realized that I can see. I met an assassin outside. Before she finished speaking, the young man sitting in front of the small table was already in front of her. He pulled out a sword and stabbed it towards her chest. Hien hurriedly reached out to block it. The tip of the sword did not want to kill her. It turned a corner and sliced open her clothes. Swish. The blood-stained clothes were torn to shreds. The girl's body was pale and weak. Her chest was wrapped in layers of white cloth, like a bud. Hien's face suddenly turned red. Xiao Ju hugged her from behind. The scabbard was pressed against Hien's neck. Their breathing was tense. The liar is here. He curled the corners of his lips, as if he was the lazy and dissolute young man in white robes under a big tree. His voice contained a hint of mockery as he indifferently laughed. Should I call you Hien or eldest Miss He? The end of the second volume. Chapter 101. The atmosphere in the room froze in an instant. It should have been a scene that made people blush and their hearts race, but when it was said by the person in front of them, there was no longer a trace of ambiguity, only the embarrassment and danger of being seen through. Hien quickly regained his senses and looked at him. The fear and nervousness that belonged to the young Chung Li Su faded away, and he revealed his usual smile. You can call me whatever you want, as long as the governor is happy. The daughter of Hisui, the gate commandant, actually came to join the army. He stared into He Yan's eyes with a smile that was not a smile. Lady, he is very brave. This person. He Yan's mind moved. Since he even knew Hisui's name, it was obvious that he was secretly investigating him. And it was not because he was exposed at the Sun Manor. From Showa capital to here, even if a messenger pigeon was sent at top speed, it would still take more than a month. Xiao Ju had long suspected him? Why was this? The young man smiled. I did not expect the governor to pay so much attention to me. I am ashamed. He Yan's face did not show any panic. Even if he was surprised, it was just a flash. Even now, if it was a normal woman, her clothes were pulled open and her identity exposed, she would probably be ashamed and angry. This person, on the other hand, looked like he did not care at all. And his heart was bigger than a man's. Perhaps it was because of this that from Jingqing to Liangzhou, and even after staying in the Liangzhou guards for so long, no one discovered that he was a woman. When Xiao Ju received the secret letter from Showa capital, she could not believe it. The gate commandant did have a child called He Yan, but it was a daughter, not a son. He also had a younger son called He Yansheng. Half a year ago, He Yan's daughter was killed by thieves on a boat on the Chunlai River. She sank into the river, and her body was still not found. According to the time, it was the day that He Yan joined the army. But for a woman to come out and join the army without being discovered for 1 or 2 days, and be safe and sound for more than half a year, it was either that the people around her were blind, or that this person was too good at disguising. Xiao Ju was not blind. Thinking carefully about the moment when she interacted with He Yan, she felt that this person was very good at disguising himself. She was born delicate and weak, and her figure was small and thin, but people would not associate her with a woman. This was because no ordinary woman would be so casual about trifles. Moreover, she was one of the best in the Liang Province Guards. Why did you come to the Liang Province Guard? He Yan thought quickly and replied, I committed a crime in Shuojing. If I was caught, I would be dead. I had no choice but to join the army. What is it? Even now, this person still did not believe her. She had clearly investigated everything. He Yan sighed. There was a young master from a wealthy family who coveted my beauty. He kidnapped me and wanted to take me as his wife. Unfortunately, an assassin came and took his life. If I stayed on the ship alone, I wouldn't be able to explain myself. Perhaps others would think that I was in cahoots with the assassins. I had no choice but to join the army. He Yan's words were half true and half false. He sounded very sincere. Xiao Ju looked at her playfully. Coveting your beauty. He Yan. What did this mean? Was he looking down on her? He Yan had looked at himself in the mirror before. Miss He's face could definitely be called dainty and charming. After all, not everyone's standards are as high as the governor's, she said with a fake smile. Xiao Ju nodded. So that's how it is. He Yan's words were half true and half false. She knew that Xiao Ju was not easy to fool, but she did not expect him to believe her so easily. She did not expect him to stop talking about it. Why did you come out in the middle of the night? His gaze swept over He Yan, and the smell of blood was hard to hide. It dyed the mattress on the bed a light red. This person actually knew that she was injured. Even so, he didn't have any pity for her. He questioned her, and now he didn't even move his hand away from her neck. In Xiao Ju's eyes, there was probably no difference between men and women. I killed Yuan Baozhen's guards, she said. After a while, Xiao Ju raised her eyebrows. Why? In the past few days when the governor was not in the Fu, Yuan Baozhen kept coming to see me. I always felt that he was suspicious of me. Later, I overheard their conversation. He Yan paused before continuing. They seemed to be following the orders of a person called Su Xiang to take your life. They were also the ones who prepared the banquet. You mean Su Xiang? Xiao Ju looked up at her. Her limpid eyes showed a strange emotion. He Yan shrugged. Yes, you can think about whether you have offended someone called Su Xiang. I woke up because of the cold. When I woke up, you were not there. The window was open. When I closed the window, I saw someone pass by. That person deliberately led me to the abandoned courtyard of the Sun Fu. He was Yuan Baozhen's guard. He wanted to use me as a hostage to tie you down. Yan shook her head. But I am not the real Cheng Li Su. I don't think the governor would give up for me. What if the governor killed me with an arrow to prevent future trouble? After thinking about it, I could not fall into his hands. I fought with him for a long time and finally killed him. Yan gestured for her to look at herself. That's how I ended up like this. Although she said it casually, she was still injured. Her complexion was not good, and her body was losing strength. To be able to kill Yuan Baozhen's guard and still be alive, you are very capable. I think so too, Yan forced a smile. Then Governor, do I have the qualifications to enter the Nine Flags Battalion now? She did not hide her desire to enter the Nine Flags Battalion. You think you can enter the Nine Flags Battalion? Xiaoju asked. Of course, and I helped you get rid of a big problem. Governor, you should reward me. Xiaoju was not angry. Instead, she laughed and let go of Yan's hand. She looked down at her and said mockingly, sending you back to Shuojing tomorrow will be my reward for you. No. Yan sat up straight, and with this movement it pulled on his wound, causing him to hiss in pain. She said, I can't go back to Shuojing. If I go back to Shuojing, the Fan family will not let me go. Governor, do you have the heart to let a good person be wrongly imprisoned? Have the heart. Yan. You can't do this. You don't have the qualifications to negotiate with me. Yan said so much that she felt dizzy. She was afraid that if she continued, she would not be able to hold on. She did not even treat the wound on her body. She said, You will regret it. Why would I regret it? Since I am going to be sent back to Shuojing, there is no need to hide my identity. Everyone knows that there is a woman in the Liangzhou guards, and will guess what is going on. Yan smiled slightly. I can only tell them that my relationship with you is not normal. Xiaoju heard this and said carelessly, How is it not normal? Not normal means not normal. I know that there is a red mole on your waist. As soon as she said this, the room suddenly became silent. There was only the sound of thunder outside the window and the continuous autumn rain falling on the stone floor. Xiaoju slowly turned to look at her. The anger in her eyes grew stronger. The young man looked like a rascal. He smiled and said with a pale face, Previously when you were bathing, my eyesight is not bad. I saw it with one glance. If you want to blame someone, blame it on our governor for being so charming. Even the red mole on your waist is so perfect that it is hard to forget. There was such a woman in this world? Xiaoju could not believe it. After Yan said this, she seemed to be unable to hold on. Her head tilted and she fainted. Xiaoju. Fei Nu's voice came from outside the door. Young master. Xiaoju said, Come in. She grabbed the mattress on the bed and threw it on Yan to cover her. Fei Nu came in and did not look at Yan. She said, The body of Yuan Baozhen's bodyguard was found in the side courtyard of the Sun residence. He died from his own plum flower darts. Xiaoju said, I know. So Yan did not lie about this matter. The smell of blood in the room was so strong that it could not be ignored. Fei Nu hesitated for a moment before asking, Young master, Yan is injured? Fei Nu was also very surprised when she found out that Yan was a woman. Other than her figure and appearance, Yan did not look like a woman at all from head to toe. However, it was this woman who killed Yuan Baozhen's bodyguard. That bodyguard was very skilled in martial arts, and was best at using poison. Her injury is not light. Young master, what do you plan to do with her now? Fei Nu asked. Xiaoju paused for a moment and said, Go out and find a female doctor. Fei Nu was slightly surprised. Xiaoju's words meant that she wanted to save Yan. Young master, have you confirmed that she is not one of Prime Minister Su's people? It doesn't seem like it. Xiaoju said, Su Jingfu despises women. He will not let women participate in important matters. In the secret letter from Shuo capital, it said that the He family and Su Jingfu have no contact. However, he thought for a moment, it is better to be careful. Fei Nu nodded. I will go and find a female doctor. After Fei Nu left, Xiaoju turned sideways and looked at Yan who was lying on the bed. She did not seem to be one of Su Jingfu's people, but it did not mean that she was not suspicious. A 16-year-old girl who was born in the family of a military officer at the city gate. Even if she had practiced martial arts since she was young, she should not be so outstanding and invincible in the Liangzhou Guards. How could an ordinary person have such willpower to mingle in the military camp? It should be known that there were men who could not bear hardships, but she did not complain. If she joined the army only because of the matter with Fan Cheng, it was a bit far-fetched. Moreover, she had always wanted to join the Nine Flags Battalion. The rain continued to fall, and the girl's face was pale. When she returned, she saw that she was covered in wounds, especially the knife wound on her back. It was very deep and long, but she did not cry out in pain. Even when she fainted due to exhaustion, the corners of her mouth were still curled up. She looked like a rascal. There was such a girl in the world. She was powerful and hateful. She was cunning and shameless. Xiao Ju closed the window and left. When He Yan woke up, the sky was already bright. She was sleeping on the bed she usually slept on, but her clothes had been changed. He Yan sat up and unconsciously opened her inner clothes. She saw that there was a white bandage wrapped around her waist. The wound from her fight with Ding Yi last night had already been bandaged. Thinking back carefully, he recalled what had happened last night. She remembered that she and Xiao Ju were at loggerheads. She used the red mole on Xiao Ju's waist to threaten the other party. Xiao Ju was very angry, and then she did not know what happened. She must have fainted, but now she touched her head. Her hair was still in the bun, and her clothes were men's clothes. No one else knew that she was a girl. Was Xiao Ju keeping it a secret for her? He Yan sighed in relief. She looked to her side and did not see Fei Nu or Xiao Ju. Did the two of them know that she was a girl, so they simply left her in the Sun residence? He Yan wanted to get out of bed, but when she moved, a small bottle with a long neck rolled out from her chest. She opened the bottle, and there were some black pills inside. There was also a note beside the bed. It said, "Wake up and take medicine." The handwriting was sharp and strong, and it was very beautiful. He Yan recognized that it was Xiao Ju's handwriting at a glance. When she was in the Xianchang school, Xiao Ju was outstanding in everything. Even the essays she wrote were hung at the entrance of the school for people to see. He Yan had a deep impression of this handwriting. She secretly copied a few copies and wanted to imitate it, but because she could not write the feeling of Xiao Ju, she gave up. Second young master Xiao left a note for her to take medicine. It should be relatively peaceful, and nothing should happen for the time being. He Yan thought to herself. Suddenly, she remembered something and looked at herself. If she wanted to protect her identity as a girl from being exposed, she could not use the servants of the Sun residence. Then who changed her clothes? Who helped her bandage her wounds? Xiao Ju could not be, so it must be Fei Nu? Although she had been in the army for many years, and did not care as much about her skin as other girls, she still felt uncomfortable thinking about it. It was as if she had been taken advantage of. But it was useless to think about it now. The other party had good intentions. She got out of bed, put on her shoes, and opened the door to take a look. As soon as she went out, He Yan felt that something was wrong. Because of the assassin at the Sun family's banquet, the servants of the Sun residence were not allowed to go near the room that He Yan and the others lived in. However, there were still maids sweeping from a distance, but today there was not a single one. Looking from a distance, it looked like the entire Sun residence was empty. Even if Xiao Ju wanted to abandon her and not care about her, why was the entire Sun residence empty? Could it be that something had happened? He Yan was confused. After thinking about it, she decided to go outside. She walked past her room, turned around the garden, and arrived at the main courtyard. She saw many soldiers wearing red armor surrounding the main hall. The maids and servants were squatting in several rows. Sun Xiangfu and his son were surrounded in the middle. Yuan Baozhen stood to the side, facing off against Xiao Ju. She had just woken up from a nap. Why were they fighting? He Yan was deep in thought when she met Xiao Ju's gaze. His eyes were cold, inexplicably reminding He Yan of what happened last night. He was inexplicably embarrassed, but after thinking about it, he braced himself and used Cheng Li Su's unique happy tone to call out, "Uncle." The tense atmosphere was suddenly interrupted by him calling out, "Uncle." Everyone turned to look at her. Yuan Baozhen's eyes flashed. "Young Master Cheng, you can see?" He Yan remembered that she had not tied the cloth around her neck. However, that was not important now. Ding Yi was dead. and her identity as a woman had been exposed by Xiaoju. It seemed that Xiaoju had finally found the person who tried to assassinate her. Now was the time to settle the score. She was just a small person. Whether she was blind or a normal person, she could not change the overall situation. He scratched her head and replied, "Is that so? It seems so. I can indeed see. I am indeed blessed by the heavens." This lie was too perfunctory, but naturally, no one dared to question her. Yuan Baozhen seemed to have realized something and asked, "Has young Master Qing seen my bodyguard?" "No," He said. "Could it be that Imperial Censor Yuan's bodyguard has disappeared?" She smiled, making it difficult for others to read her thoughts. Yuan Baozhen felt very uneasy. After Ding Yi went out last night, he did not return until this morning. Something must have happened. Previously, he had an argument with Ding Yi. Ding Yi wanted to kidnap Cheng Li Su and use her to threaten Xiaoju. Yuan Baozhen felt that this was not a good time. They parted on bad terms. However, the person who Ding Yi really listened to was He Rufei. There was nothing he could do. If he had snuck out last night, it must have been for Cheng Li Su. Now Cheng Li Su was standing here perfectly fine. Even her eyes looked normal. However, Ding Yi had disappeared. Yuan Baozhen's heart sank. He felt that something bad must have happened. Xiaoju had ordered people to surround the Sun estate early in the morning. This made him even more uneasy. This person's way of doing things was very logical. When he didn't hear Yuan Baozhen's reply, Ian wasn't in a hurry. He moved to Xiaoju's side and stood properly. He first smiled at Xiaoju in an ingratiating manner before asking Slave Fei beside him in a low voice, "Big brother Slave Fei, what's going on now?" Fei Nu looked at He Yan's normal smiling face and felt that He Yan's calmness was even better. After such a big incident last night, her identity had clearly been exposed. However, she could still continue to act as if nothing had happened. It was admirable. Before Fei Nu could reply, Sun Xiangfu had already opened his mouth. His expression was very ugly, but he still forced a smile. "Governor, what do you mean by this? But what did our Sun residents not do well enough to annoy the governor?" Sun Ling stood beside Sun Xiangfu and stared at Xiaoju with hatred. He did not speak, but it seemed that he could not calm down. "That's right." Yuan Baozhen stroked his beard and muttered, "Governor, where did you get these soldiers from? His Majesty currently forbids private soldiers and horses. If you are really dissatisfied with Magistrate Sun, you cannot vent your anger in this way." Ian raised his eyebrows. These words were harsh, accusing Xiaoju of two crimes in one breath. One was privately raising soldiers, and the other was using public office to avenge private wrongs. What a sharp tongue. Hearing this, Xiaoju curved her lips and said, "Imperial Censor Yuan is overthinking. These are soldiers that I borrowed from Xiaoling County. The crime of privately raising soldiers and horses is not something that I can bear. I wonder if Imperial Censor Yuan can bear the crime of slandering an official of the Imperial Court? Soldiers from Xiaoling County?" Yuan Baozhen's body stiffened. How was this possible? The leading red-clothed soldier cupped his hands and said, "I am here on the orders of Xiaoling County Chief Shi to assist Governor Imperial Censor in investigating the murder of an official's family by the magistrate of Liangzhou." Murder of an official's family? When Sun Xiangfu heard this, he subconsciously cried out, "Governor, I am innocent. The assassin in the residence has nothing to do with me. I don't know what is going on. You can't accuse me. Furthermore, the young master can see now. You can't arrest people just because you are angry. I am innocent, I am innocent." His cries were tragic and heartbreaking. Hearing this, Xiaoju sneered. Who said that the official's family was referring to Cheng Li Su? Not Cheng Li Su? Everyone, including He Yan, was stunned. At this time, a clear female voice came from outside the courtyard. "I am the one who was murdered." Two people came into the courtyard. One was Xiaoju's bodyguard, Qi Wu. The other was a Niao Niao wearing a warm dress. Her hair was tied into two buns. She had bright eyes and white teeth. Who else could it be but Song Tao Tao? Under the protection of Qi Wu, Song Tao Tao walked over to Xiaoju and scolded Sun Xiangfu and Sun Ling. "I am the daughter of the Vice Minister of Internal Affairs. You dare to kidnap me on the street? If it weren't for second young Master Xiao and young Master Cheng saving me, I don't know what would have happened to me. The people from Wanhua Pavilion have already been captured by second young Master Zhao's people. There are witnesses and evidence. Let's see how you will deny it this time. When I return to Shuajing, I will tell my father about this. You can all wait to lose your heads. This little girl looked sweet, but her words were very imposing. She must hate Sun Ling. If it weren't for Sun Ling, she wouldn't have ended up in Wanhua Pavilion and suffered so much. Her fingers were almost broken. In other words, if it weren't for He Yan accidentally saving her that night, this little girl would have been ruined by Sun Ling. Sun Xiangfu and Sun Xiangfu's faces were ashen. If it was Xiao Ju and Cheng Li Su who were involved in the murder of an official's daughter, they could still argue. After all, the assassins were all dead, and there was no evidence to prove that they were involved. But who knew that Xiao Ju would go so far and find such a little girl? Who would have thought that the girl Sun Ling kidnapped was the daughter of an official in the capital? But in these years, how could this be the only evil thing Sun Ling had done? The girls who were kidnapped to the Sun residence came from all over the country. There were also daughters of wealthy families or officials. But once they arrived in Liangzhou, it was like a needle in the ocean. There was no way out. Sun Xiangfu and Sun Xiangfu had covered the sky here for so many years that it had long been dark. Whether it was the daughter of a poor family or the daughter of a wealthy family, once they arrived here, there was no difference. He Yan stared at Xiao Ju's back and couldn't help but clap for him in his heart. Second young Master Xiao was nowhere to be seen these days. It turned out that he was busy with this matter. At that time, he thought that he took Song Taotao away to protect her. Now it seemed that wasn't the case. After all, if Xiao Ju took Song Taotao with him and left her in the Sun residence, even if Sun Ling recognized her, he wouldn't dare to do anything. He sent Song Taotao away to prevent the Sun father and son from suspecting anything. Now Song Taotao's appearance was the most important straw to convict Sun Xiangfu. This is all a misunderstanding. Commander-in-Chief, let me explain. Sun Xiangfu kicked Sun Ling, causing him to kneel down. Sun Xiangfu scolded. Unfilial son, you've caused such a huge mess. What should we do now? Ask for forgiveness from the governor. County Magistrate Sun kneeled to the wrong person, Xiao Ju said casually. I'm not the imperial censor. He looked at Yuan Baozhen and said slowly. Imperial censor Yuan has been in Liangzhou for many days. You don't even know what's going on here. If someone finds out and accuses you of dereliction of duty, I'm afraid that even your teacher won't be able to save you. Yuan Baozhen was so angry that he almost vomited blood. He looked at Xiao Ju. The young governor had a smile on his face. His gaze was calm, but the malice in his eyes was overwhelming. He wasn't here for Yuan Baozhen. He was here for Sun Xiangfu. But this was actually worse because his teacher, Su Jingfu, definitely didn't want this situation. What did it mean to go for wool and come home shorn? This wasn't just a handful of rice. It was his entire granary being emptied. Ding Yi was missing. How could he deal with the aggressive Xiao Ju alone? Song Taotao looked at the Sun family aggressively. He Yan was deep in thought. If it was just Song Taotao, he might be able to punish Sun Ling. But Sun Xiangfu might not. If there was someone protecting him, Sun Xiangfu might still have a way out. When Xiao Ju made a move, would he leave a way out for others? He Yan didn't think so. Governor, please listen to our explanation. I'm really innocent. Sun Xiangfu and Sun Ling cried and howled. This matter concerned him. Yuan Baozhen said with difficulty, Governor, maybe there really is a misunderstanding. Xiao Ju looked at him with a faint smile. After a while he nodded and said, Go to the side courtyard. Go to the side courtyard? Why go to the side courtyard? When Sun Xiangfu and his son heard this, their expressions changed drastically. They almost fainted. The red-armored soldiers escorted Sun Xiangfu and his son to the side courtyard with the rest of the people. It rained last night. The dust on the ground of the courtyard was washed clean by the rain. It was originally a quiet and peaceful scene, but now it was overflowing with desolation and misery. He Yan looked sideways at the room next to him. The door was tightly shut. When he thought of the Buddha statues on and under the table last night, he couldn't help but feel disgusted. But why did Xiao Ju bring them here? Yuan Baozhen also didn't understand. Governor, do you want to dig 3 feet underground? Let great imperial censor Yuan see what's underground. Although he was smiling, his expression was indifferent. His tone was very calm. He ordered the soldiers, dig. The soldiers obeyed the order. They searched the Sun family's residence for hoes and sickles and dug down. When Sun Xiangfu and his son saw this, they seemed to be unable to hold on. Their legs went soft and they fell to the ground. Their faces were ashen. Song Taotao asked He Yan in a low voice, "What's underground?" The house was full of Buddha statues, the talismans pasted on the door, and the overgrown weeds that grew in the deserted courtyard. He Yan's expression became serious. He could roughly guess. She didn't say anything. She really didn't know where to start. After a while, someone said, "Governor, there's something here." It was a female corpse wrapped in a mat. Her body was very small, even smaller than Song Taotao's. The clothes she wore had already rotted, revealing her white bones. It was unknown how delicate she was in the past. She was pitiful and cute. Continue. Xiaoju said. Not long after, someone else said, "There's a corpse here." It was also a female corpse. Her hair was long and it seemed like she had died not long ago. One could vaguely see her charm when she was alive. The third corpse, the fourth, the fifth. In the end, no one said anything. There was only the sound of digging. There was a deathly silence in the air. It was hard to imagine that the ground of this courtyard could hold so many corpses. The courtyard was full of corpses covered in white cloth. There was no place to put them, so they could only be piled up together. Under the deserted courtyard, there were countless skeletons of women buried. Perhaps there were gentle and shy flower girls, but there were also beautiful women. Here, regardless of whether they were rich or poor, high or low, they were all turned into mud and piled up into a mountain of unrecognizable corpses. These were all women who had been kidnapped by Sun Ling, then bullied and killed. They had suffered a great disaster when they were alive, and they could not rest in peace after death. The guilty man piled up countless Buddha statues and talismans to suppress and curse them. The altar lamp swayed forever. To these women, their lives were like an eternal night. There was no light. He Yan took a deep breath. The sins committed by Sun Xiangfu and his son were not covered by heaven and earth. God was angry and people abandoned them. Even after death, they were still punished.